Hello everyone! I finished all the individual episodes for the story of the Lich King, and now I've combined them all into one single video. All of them together, it makes for quite a large YouTube video, so if you're like, I don't have the time to sit through all of this, the individual episodes are linked down below. I had a lot of fun working on this video. Arthas, Ner'zhul, the Lich King, they are incredible stories, and not to mention that I was able to bring in so many amazing friends and content creators. All of them, they're linked down below in the description as well as in the video itself, and by all means, check out their channels. You might find your next favorite streamer or your next favorite YouTuber, and I really hope that you'll enjoy this video. Ladies and gentlemen, sit back, relax, and enjoy the full story of the Lich King. And until next time guys, see ya! At the beginning of our story, on the planet of Draenor, orcs and Draenei at the time, they lived in relative peace. They would occasionally trade with each other, but overall they didn't interact much and they left each other alone. Where the orcs were born on Draenor, the Draenei were not. They came from a planet called Argus, they were running away from the Legion, and one day they were forced to make a crash landing on the planet. The Draenei were on the run from Kil'jaeden and the Burning Legion as they had refused to join Team Sargeras, and Kil'jaeden was pissed. He felt betrayed by his longtime friend and co-leader Velen the Prophet, and he had sworn that he would hunt them down even if it took him 1,000 years. Each time that Kil'jaeden and the Legion came close to the Draenei, Velen would be warned, and his people, with the help of the Naru, they would escape in time, leaving the Legion with empty hands. It's unknown what happened to the planets that the Draenei evacuated, but now on Draenor, they're stuck, they can't get away. The Naru K'ur, the one that rescued them in the first place, with the dimensional ship called Genedar, he'd fallen ill, which caused the crash landing in the first place, and this meant that they could no longer flee. Kil'jaeden did not know this, of course, and when he was told that the Draenei were found again, he decided that a change of tactics was required. Instead of sending the full might of the Legion and see the Draenei flee once again, he decided to deceive and corrupt the native races of orcs and use them to do his dirty work. His first victim, the one who he chose to make first contact with, was the orcish shaman Ner'zhul. Shamans played a very important role within the orcish culture, and Ner'zhul was the elder shaman. The orcs respected him, he was the chieftain of the Shadowmoon clan, and the closest thing that the orcs came to an overall leader. The shamans have a deep connection to the elements of the land, and sometimes they were actually able to make contact with the spirits of the deceased. Rokan, Ner'zhul's deceased mate, would sometimes appear in his visions, giving no words of wisdom, yet she would fill his heart with tenderness and opening him afresh to the needs of his people each time her spirit brushed his. Ner'zhul missed her rough laughter and her warmth beside him at night, but he was content with the way it was. As he made himself a potion, chanting softly over it, getting ready for one of these visions, he wondered if she would visit him tonight. The ritual did nothing to actually cause a vision for Ner'zhul, that was entirely up to the ancestors' will, but deep in Ner'zhul's heart, he longed to see his mate and his wish was granted. In his vision, he stood next to Rokan, standing on a mountaintop, observing the sunrise, and Ner'zhul's heart lifted. Rokan turned to her mate, smiling, and for the first time since he had exhaled her final breath as a living being, she spoke to him. "You have led our people well," she said, "but the time has come to deepen the old ways, take them further, for the good of all." The way that Rokan spoke with such authority alarmed Ner'zhul at first. Rokan had not been a chieftain, nor did she ever hold a position of power in life that would give her such authority. Annoyed at his lack of faith, Ner'zhul pushed the doubt away. He was not a spirit, so there was much that he did not understand about the spirit world. And why wouldn't Rokan speak for the ancestors? Understand that the ancestors were worshipped and respected by the shamans and the orcs, and Ner'zhul listened with great care as Rokan gave him a warning. She told him that the Draenei were a great threat to the orcs, a blight upon the world, and that they needed to be eliminated. Had Ner'zhul in that moment listened to his gut, he might have realized that the words were false. This vision was not Rokan feeding him information, they were actually the words of Kil'jaeden the Deceiver, using the orcs their faith and trust to place the orcs against the Draenei. He told Ner'zhul that the world would be theirs, and that Ner'zhul would lead all of them. The first step in the plan was to unite the orcish clans and form the Hordes. The image of Rokan had been good enough to convince Ner'zhul, but convincing the other chieftains, that would be a little bit more difficult. The Orcish clans, they didn't really wage outright war with each other, but some of them loved fighting a little bit too much, and they were not on friendly terms with other clans. A message was sent to all the chieftains to gather and listen to the dire warning Ner'zhul had received from the ancestors. At the foot of their sacred mountain they gathered, the mountain that they called Oshugan, but which was really the crash ship of the Draenei, with the Naru Ku'ur still trapped inside. Ner'zhul told them that their enemy was the Draenei, and naturally, most of the orcs, they couldn't believe that this was true. Especially the chieftain of the Frostwolf clan, Durotan, he could not believe that the Draenei would want to cause them harm. They had saved his and Orcam Doomhammer's life when they were just little orcish boys, yet the ancestors, they do not lie. Even Drekvar, the shaman of the Frostwolf clan, he confirmed to Durotan that it was true, that Mother Kesher herself had confirmed it, and Mother Kesher, she was the elder shaman of the Frostwolf clan before she passed away. Another fake vision of Kil'jaeden, but if there was anyone that Durotan trusted, it was the wise old orc Kesher. How easy it was to plant the seed of doubt, and that was all it took. Ner'zhul informed them that he did not ask them to directly go to war at this very moment. Instead, all he asked of them was to prepare. To discuss what the right course of action would be, to come together not as different clans, but as the same people. They were all orcs, wanting safe homes for their young, success in the hunt, mates who would love them, and honor amongst the ancestors. Despite his doubts, even Durotan agreed that the Frostwolf clan would prepare for war, start training, and the orcs took their first step towards eradicating the Draenei. Over time, the image of Rokan told Ner'zhul that there were other beings besides the ancestors and the elements that the living didn't know about. Ner'zhul desperately wanted to know what these beings were, but Rokan told him that he still drew breath and he wasn't ready to meet them yet. Ner'zhul pleaded to know that they needed their aid if they were to protect the future generations from the Draenei's insidious plots, but what he didn't mention was that he, deep down inside, he started to enjoy being the center of attention from every single orc in every single clan. He did not outright say that he had begun to desire the promised power and that his motives deep down were selfish, but he knew it himself, he felt deep inside. Rokan looked at him and said that perhaps he was right and it was time to meet them. She had also advised Ner'zhul to take a certain amount of herbs brewed to precise strength to keep his mind and spirit open to the visions. That was the explanation that they gave him, but it's most likely that this brew was designed to make Ner'zhul more vulnerable to their manipulations. As Ner'zhul took the bait and desired to see these beings that he had no knowledge of, Kil'jaeden stepped away from using the image of Rokan and he showed his true self to the orc. Ner'zhul was sad that his mate no longer appeared to him, but he quickly dismissed the feeling. Surely this being was far superior to even the shade of his beloved mate. And despite Kil'jaeden looking so very much like the Draenei, Ner'zhul drank in his words and he followed his orders. Orcs attacked Draenei with great ferocity and minimal casualties, since the Draenei, they simply didn't expect to be attacked out of nowhere. But their leader did not sit still. Velen the Prophet wanted to know what was going on with the orcs, why did they suddenly attack out of nowhere? And he sent a letter to Ner'zhul, asking him to join him in a holy pilgrimage to enter the heart of the mountain, the place both races found sacred, and ask wisdom of beings much wiser than them as to how they could heal the rifts. Kil'jaeden and Ner'zhul's apprentice Gul'dan, they were present when Ner'zhul received this message, and they were quickly on the offensive, but the word struck Ner'zhul and he did not immediately agree. He was not so eager to attack those who came unarmed and with the promise of trying to work together towards peace. They are not grun to kill unarmed foes, but despite that, he could not go against Kil'jaeden and Gul'dan, and he would not allow the Draenei to defile their sacred place. At Gul'dan's suggestion, he ordered Durotan of the Frostwolf clan to capture Velen and his people that joined him, so that Ner'zhul could speak with the prophets. Like I said, Durotan was once saved by the Draenei, and he did not agree with the path that the orcs were placed on, yet he couldn't refuse the order to capture Velen. Refusing to go along with all of this would mean almost certain exile, and this would endanger his clan, so he did what he was told, and he rode out to capture Velen. During a conversation, Velen tried to explain to Durotan why he wanted to reach the mountain, that there was a being inside, ancient and wise, that had long cared for the Draenei Draenei people. That this being was the reason why the spirits of their beloved dead, the spirits of the orcs, were drawn to this place, but that was exactly the wrong thing to say. The shaman Drekvar was outraged that Velen even tried to suggest such a thing, and the orcs present, they were ready to murder Velen on the spot. Durotan, he punched Drekvar across the face, told him to protect them, and despite his fury, Drekvar followed his warchief's command, and he used the elements to protect Velen and the Draenei. The prophet was now a prisoner of the Frostwolf clan, just as Durotan was ordered to do, but the chieftain, he had a bad feeling about all of this. That night, he paid a visit to Velen, trying to find reason behind what he was told. Why were the Draenei planning to do them harm while the orcs had done nothing to them? And Velen, he simply reversed the question. Why had the orcs attacked the Draenei that had done nothing to the orcs? And Durotan was placed in an impossible position. Velen's words rang true, yet the ancestors and his traditions, the very foundations which were his life, told him otherwise. He decided to let Velen go, and he informed the prophet that when it came to it, if they would ever meet on the battlefield, he would stand at his people's side. Ner'zhul wanted a prisoner, but Durotan said that if he wanted one, he should have been there himself, and Velen was released. When Durotan made his report to Ner'zhul, Ner'zhul shrieked of outrage, and fear bubbled up inside him, since Kil'jaeden would not be pleased. The orcish shaman realized that the benevolent creature actually struck fear into his heart, and his mind started to wander as Durotan's words continued. He noticed Gul'dan's eyes fixed upon him, and another wave of fear washed over as his apprentice witnessed his first moments of doubt. Ner'zhul's mind drifted so far away that he didn't even realize that Durotan had finished talking, and he didn't know what to do. Durotan and the Frostwolf clan, they were well regarded amongst the other clans, so punishing them would have consequences. But he also couldn't let the Frostwolf chieftain get away with this, not after so many people supporting him in their war against the Draenei. Ner'zhul didn't know what to say, and the silence continued until Gul'dan spoke. My master is so overcome with rage that he cannot speak. You have disobeyed a direct order from your spiritual leader. Return to your camp, Durotan, son of Garad. My master will send you a letter shortly conveying his decision. Ner'zhul found his words, and he agreed with Gul'dan's plan, sending the Frostwolf chieftain home. Shortly afterwards, Ner'zhul informed Kil'jaeden of their failure, and naturally, the deceiver was furious. Ner'zhul quaked before that anger, prostrating himself on the earth, murmuring, "Forgive me!" as Kil'jaeden raged. Eventually, Kil'jaeden managed to compose himself again, and he told Ner'zhul to never again trust Durotan with an important task like that. They did take 2 of the Atamal crystals that Velen had carried with him, and these crystals, there were 7 in total, they all had great different powers. Ner'zhul informed Kil'jaeden about these crystals, about their minor victory, thinking that it might please the Great One, but to someone like Kil'jaeden, these crystals, well, they weren't worth anything. The crystals would be more used to the orcish people in their battles to come against the Draenei, as Kil'jaeden asked, "That is your battle, is it not?" Fear again clenched hard at Ner'zhul's heart. "Of course, Lord, it is the ancestors' will." Kil'jaeden looked at him for a moment, his brilliant eyes emanating flames. "It is my will," he said simply, and Ner'zhul nodded frantically. Of course, it is your will, and I obey you in all things." The next few months, the orcs would continue fighting against the Draenei, and Ner'zhul received message after message informing him about these battles, little casualties, great conquest, the ecstasy of blood spilled. The orcs grew more skilled at killing the Draenei, but Ner'zhul's doubts grew and grew. He tried to fight back his suspicions, terrified that somehow Kil'jaeden was able to read his thoughts, but they came like maggots writhing from a corpse to hunt his sleeping and waking thoughts. Kil'jaeden looked very, very similar to a Draenei. Was it possible that they were somehow the same? And was he, Ner'zhul, being used in some sort of civil war? The thoughts came until Ner'zhul could take it no more, and he decided to make a trip to their sacred mountain to find some wisdom. He stepped towards the pool, he made his offer, waiting for the ancestors to appear, but nothing happened. He did not panic right away. Sometimes the ancestors took their time about responding, but when more time had passed, unease began to sit in Ner'zhul's heart. Ancestors, beloved dead, I, Ner'zhul, shaman of the Shadowmoon clan, leader to your children, have come seeking, no, begging wisdom. I I have lost my way to your light. The times are dark and fearful, even as we grow stronger, more united as a people. I question the path I am on, and I beseech your guidance. Please, if you have ever loved and cared for those who have followed in your footsteps, come to me now and advise me that I may lead them well. The pool began to glow, and in the water he saw a face looking back at him, the face of his beloved Rokan, but with pain in his heart he realized that she was looking at him with a face filled with hatred. Other faces began to appear, dozens of them, all with the same expression, and nausea welled inside Ner'zhul as he cried out, "Please, help me! Grant me your wisdom that I may win favor again in your eyes." Rokan's features softened somewhat, and it was with a trace of compassion in her voice that she spoke. "There's nothing you can do, not now, not in 100 years, to win favor in our eyes. You are not a savior of your people, but their betrayer." As the ancestors turned their back on him, Ner'zhul realized what a fool he had been, how easily he had let himself be deceived. On his way back, he tried to come up with plans to turn it all around, to bring the orcs back to the right path, but his apprentice Gul'dan, he had other plans in mind. Gul'dan had followed Ner'zhul to the mountain, had seen all that transpired, and he informed Kil'jaeden that Ner'zhul was about to betray him. Kil'jaeden was mad, of course, but punishment could wait, as Gul'dan was now chosen to follow Kil'jaeden's plans, while Ner'zhul was forced to watch as they corrupted and manipulated his people even further. From that moment on, Ner'zhul's story would be watching as his apprentice Gul'dan stepped into the spotlight. Gul'dan had always had a lust for power, so there was no reason to play games. Kil'jaeden could simply be honest with Gul'dan, and Gul'dan had no problem with using his people to benefit himself. The elements eventually banned the orcs, since even they recognized that a war against the Draenei was not the right way. In exchange, Gul'dan offered the orcs a new source of power, fel magic, and the first orcish warlocks were created. They used this fel magic, these warlock powers, to literally suck the life out of their children, magically age them, and produce fighters at a much faster rate. Blackhand was appointed to be the first war chief of the now officially formed horde, but in truth, it was actually Gul'dan running the show with his Shadow Council. The war against the Draenei went as planned, until only their city of Shefrev remained. For this final battle, Kil'jaeden sent Manoroth down to offer his blood, granting the orcs incredible power, but also turning them into slaves. All the while, Ner'zhul was forced to watch, but the wolf still had some teeth. He wrote a message to Durotan, who was against Gul'dan and all that the horde did, but again, he couldn't speak out. Ner'zhul warned Durotan not to accept Gul'dan's so-called gift, so the Frostwolf clan, they refused to drink, while the other chieftains, like Romar's Hellscream, they embraced his gift willingly. With the demon blood pumping in their veins, the orcs stormed Shefrev, murdering every Draenei, man, woman and child that they could find. Kil'jaeden saw the slaughter and figured that his plans were successful, that Velen the Prophet had finally been taken care of, so he left Draenor and he left the orcs to their fate. Prophet Velen and the Draenei, they'd realized that the Burning Legion was behind their war with the orcs, so they decided to leave a few of their people behind in Shefrev, and these were quite a lot of people since they had to make it look like a lot of Draenei were still left behind, while the rest of them hid away in Zangar Marsh. The use of fel magic and the war had corrupted and nearly destroyed the planet of Draenor. Lands had dried out, water was hard to find, food was limited. All around, the horde started to rise up against Gul'dan, who had led them down this path. Thankfully for Gul'dan, the corrupted guardian Medivh, he made contact with him and he showed him the world of Azeroth, a land with water, food and plenty of enemies to give the orcs a good fight. The promise of a world to conquer led to the first orcish horde invasion, but Ner'zhul was not invited to this party. As Gul'dan and the horde took down Stormwind, Orgrim Doomhammer, he found out about Gul'dan's corruption and that Blackhand was being used as his puppet. He challenged Blackhand to leadership of the horde, he won that battle and he was trying to guide the horde back to a more honorful way while still trying to conquer the planet of Azeroth. They simply needed this planet, so Doomhammer, even though he was honorful, he still tried to conquer the planet. This meant that Gul'dan, he was no longer in a real position of power, but he wasn't done scheming just yet. He created the first of the Death Knights, amongst them Teron Gore. He created Ogre Magi. He abandoned the horde in a critical moment of the war, and this caused them to lose the siege of Lordaeron. Eventually losing this siege meant that the horde was pushed back all the way to the Blackrock Mountain, and there they were eventually defeated by the Alliance of Lordaeron. Like I said, Gul'dan didn't care about his people. All he wanted was power, and he believed that he could find that power in the tomb of Sargeras. But all he found there was his own demise.
I am Gul'dan. I am darkness incarnate. It cannot end like this.
The Alliance followed the escaping orcs to the location of the Dark Portal. Khadgar closed it, as some of the orcs they stepped through the portal to return home to Draenor, but they were defeated. Ner'zhul and the orcs left behind, they saw the retreating orcs. The Death Knight Teron Gore informed Ner'zhul of what had happened, as their gateway to a better future was shut down by Khadgar. Although Khadgar was able to shut down the Dark Portal, he was unable to completely sever the connection between Draenor and Azeroth. The Death Knight Teron Gore had worked together with Gul'dan, and he could feel that there was still some sort of connection. They could empower that rift, reunite the Horde, and invade Azeroth, this time not to conquer the planets. They tried, and the Alliance was simply too powerful to take the planets, but they could go back to collect 3 powerful artifacts and use those artifacts to create more portals to different worlds. Surely, other planets would not put up such a fight as Azeroth had, but first things first, they had to empower the rifts, and the Horde required a leader. That's why Teron Gore needed Ner'zhul at his side. Even though Ner'zhul was deceived, the orcs still regarded him as a high leader, and with Ner'zhul at his side, he would be able to reunite the clans. But when he first showed up in the village, Ner'zhul did not want to listen. He was lost in his despair, could think about nothing else but his own demise, yet Teron Gore had to convince him, and he did his best to explain his plans and give a little bit of hope to the old shaman. Eventually, Ner'zhul was willing to listen, and together with Teron Gore, they made their plans. First, they needed to empower a new portal to open up that rift, and to do this, they had to get their hands on the skull of Gul'dan. This skull was picked up by one of the warlocks that joined Gul'dan into the Tomb of Sargeras. The orc survived the events in the tomb, even though Gul'dan did not. He picked up the skull switched owners a few times, until it eventually came in possession of Hurakan Skullsplinter. Hurakan was the chieftain of the Bone Chewer clan at the time. Ner'zhul, he was able to convince the other chieftains of their plan, and he placed Gromarsh Hellscream, war chief of the Warsong clan, on a very special mission. Gromarsh was charged with convincing Hurakan to give up the skull, but Hurakan, he was quite happy with his little artifact, and he did not want to give it up. This meant that Gromarsh had to fight for it. He was able to keep control over his bloodlust, the demon blood pumping in his veins, and he was able to fulfill his mission and even convince the new chieftain, Tagar Spinebreaker, to join him and Ner'zhul in the new hordes. After reopening the Dark Portal, their task was to collect 3 artifacts: the Book of Medivh, the Eye of Dalaran, and the Scepter of Sargeras. As Gromarsh, Teron Gorefiend and several others stepped through the portal, Ner'zhul stayed behind, holding the rift open and communicating with the skull of his former apprentice. Even in death, the skull of Gul'dan was still able to whisper, so great was Gul'dan's power, now locked away in this artifact. As the Horde returned for a second invasion, the Alliance of Lordaeron, they rose up once more to defend the planet. They didn't right away understand what the Horde was trying to do, and this gave the Horde the opportunity that they needed to collect their artifacts. They even gained the help of the Black Dragon Deathwing, and in return for Deathwing's help, the Horde would take several of his Black Dragon eggs with them back to Draenor. Within Hellfire Citadel, Ner'zhul waited for Teron Gore to return, yet Teron Gore did not come alone. With him was Deathwing himself, who met with Ner'zhul, and he requested the skull of Gul'dan. At first, Ner'zhul was very reluctant to let go of the skull. After all, Gul'dan was his former apprentice, and if there was any power left, it should belong to him. You don't refuse a being such as Deathwing though, so as the dragon collected the artifact, took it with him, Teron Gore and Ner'zhul, they worked on the preparations to cast their spell and get those portals open. Now the Alliance of Lordaeron, they were not sitting on their hands doing all of this. They eventually figured out what the Horde was trying to do, and they couldn't let the Horde just go. Sure, Azeroth would be safe for the moment, but other worlds would be in danger. The same devastation the orcs caused to their world would spread, so their leader Trevelyan, he decided that they had to go. They had to step through the Dark Portal, take the battle to the orcs' home world to stop them once and for all. With Trevelyan came several Alliance troops, but also very important characters such as Illyria, Khadgar, Den of Trollbane, and Kurgan Wildhammer.
This is our chance. Storm the portal!
Together, they charged the portal, which Gromash and his forces were trying to hold. They charged through it, they got through the portal, they claimed a piece of the land of Draenor, they built up Honor Hold, and for months, Khadgar worked on figuring out what Ner'zhul was trying to do. What was Ner'zhul waiting for? Why hadn't he cast his spells yet? As they were wondering why he hadn't done this yet, one night it came to the mage. Once every 547 years, there's a celestial event on Draenor that involves 3 constellations. The stars would line up perfectly, forming the scepter, the book and the eye, the perfect moment for Ner'zhul to cast and empower his spell. And according to Khadgar's calculations, at the point that they're talking about this, they were 55 days away from this event, which would last for 3 days in total. Ner'zhul had spent months working on his spell, and they were ready to cast it, but in order to do it properly, they needed to go to a specific location that would empower the spell. The Black Temple, formerly known to the Draenei as Karabor, it was a place of power on Draenor, and this location would be perfect. Ner'zhul, Teron Gore and Kil'jaeden Deadeye, they prepared to leave Hellfire Citadel, as Karkov Bladefist and the Ogre Dentark, they were left behind to keep the Alliance forces busy. Khadgar and the troops, they attacked the Citadel, trying to stop Ner'zhul. Karkov, he realized that this was a battle so they simply couldn't win, but he figured that he bought Ner'zhul enough time, so he made his escape. Dentark the Ogre, he was not so lucky. He ended up in a wizard duel with Khadgar, which was intense, but Khadgar was clearly the better mage and he decapitated the Ogre. With the fortress taken, the Alliance realizes that Ner'zhul was gone, so they had to track him down. Khadgar used his magic to track down 2 artifacts. He tracks down the Skull of Gul'dan and the Eye of Dalaran, but to his shock and surprise, he realizes that the artifacts are in 2 different places, so the group has to split up. As Khadgar, Illyria and Trellian, they track down the Skull of Gul'dan, Danav and Kurdran, they follow Ner'zhul and the Eye. Eventually, the flying griffins of the Wildhammer dwarves led by Kurdran, they were able to pin down Ner'zhul and his party beneath some trees, but Ner'zhul is not powerless at all. This next part describes Ner'zhul's power perfectly. It's taken from the novel Beyond the Dark Portal. "They're slaughtering us!" Ner'zhul hissed at Gorefiend, who was crouched beside him. "Do something!" The Death Knight glared at him, and a slow, calculated grin spread across his rotting face. "This is but a handful of short human pretenders and overgrown birds. I thought the mighty Ner'zhul would be able to handle such a pathetic attack. But no matter, I can, if you're unable." He started to rise. The impudence! Ner'zhul's mind shot back to the conversation with Gul'dan's skull. Arrogance! He should not speak so to you! No, he should not. "You should not speak so to me, Teron Gorefiend," he said, his voice icy. Gorefiend blinked, surprised at his tone. "Nor will I permit it from you again." Ner'zhul rose, fueled by his anger. He clenched his fist as he concentrated on the earth beneath them and the air around them. His shamanistic magic had once made him one with the world, able to tap into the elements themselves. But the elements no longer heeded his call. They had not, since he had sworn allegiance to Kil'jaeden, as if the elements were disgusted by the demonic energy that now tainted all his race. But no matter, he had learned new skills since. Whereas before, the forest had been still, save for the cries of attacks and the wails of the dying, now a wind erupted out of nowhere. A griffin that a moment before been diving smoothly for another pass, beak open in an angry shriek, claws extended, now caught frantically as it was buffeted about as if by unseen hand. Its rider struggled to maintain its seat, but failed and fell heavily toward the ground. The unburdened griffin sought to the skies. Ner'zhul gestured with both hands commandingly, and the wind snatched up dry grey sand and proceeded to scour both dwarf and griffin with it. The Wildhammer cried out, not in victory, but in agony, as his skin was scoured from his bones. It was a sweet sound to Ner'zhul's ears. Its mount was no luckier. Feathers flew and droplets of blood were caught up in the whirlwind. Seconds later, there was nothing but 2 piles of glistening flesh on forest floor. Ner'zhul had definitely learned some new tricks, and it seems like he no longer asks the elements to serve him, he now forces them to bend to his will. Teron Gore was impressed, but wasn't just going to sit on the sidelines. With his dark magic, he shot down Kurdran Wildhammer from the sky. They captured him, and this forced the other dwarves to retreat, allowing the rest of the orcs to continue their journey. Despite their captive, it was clear that they needed a hideout, and they needed to find one soon. The one place they could think of was Auchindoun, but Kil'jaeden Deadeye fearless, powerful Kil'jaeden, he was terrified to go to that place. The history behind Auchindoun is that it used to be a holy burial ground for the Draenei until Gul'dan's lust for power had his Shadow Council search the area for artifacts of power. They had found an artifact to be sure, but something had gone wrong and they released Murmur, an elemental born when the universe was created. Murmur's arrival devastated the area around Auchindoun, desecrated the holy site, and now Ner'zhul and the others, they were planning to enter this area. They had no choice though, the Alliance was right behind them, so Kil'jaeden, he found his courage and the party moved on ahead. Inside of Auchindoun, they found remnants of the Shadow Council, amongst them the Orc Vorpal and the Ogre Blackheart. All these years, they had been waiting for an opportunity to rejoin the Horde, and now the Horde had come to them. They would stand at Ner'zhul's side, and together they would fight against their foe, the Alliance, giving Ner'zhul enough time to reach the Black Temple. Shortly afterwards, Dun of Trollbane and the rest of the Alliance troops that follow him, they also found a way to Auchindoun, and they too gained powerful allies. Nemuran, a Draenei and one of the last of the Akunai, he'd survived the war with the orcs and he was pissed that the orcs dared to defile their holy grounds. After talking with Danav and finding out what these strange humans were doing here, Nemuran agreed to aid them in their battle against the orcs. The spirits of the dead were called to serve once more and the forces they clashed with each other. When they found Kurdran Wildhammer, he'd been beaten up pretty good by the orcs, but a mighty healing spell from Nemuran made him good as new. Meanwhile, Teron Gorefiend and Ner'zhul, they were busy with creating a portal, which would allow them to escape. And of course, Danav wanted desperately to stop them, but in his way was the mighty Kil'jaeden Deadeye. A fierce battle between the old orc and the skilled human followed, with Danav being victorious and ending Kil'jaeden's life. This is probably why Kil'jaeden was so scared to go to Auchindoun. He'd probably seen in a vision his moment of demise. This was probably inside of Auchindoun, which could be the reason why he didn't want to go there. Now, even though Kil'jaeden was defeated, he did buy Ner'zhul and Teron Gorefiend enough time to make their portal, to make a clean escape, which meant that the Alliance, they had to regroup, try to get to the Black Temple before it was too late. Khadgar, Illyria, Tyrellian and the troops that came with them, they were able to defeat Deathwing and take the Skull of Gul'dan. Only the book was now required to close the Dark Portal, and as Kurdran flew in to inform them of what had happened in Auchindoun, the troops they grouped up and they charged the Black Temple. Ner'zhul had spent a full day gathering the energies, working his spell, and he was nearly ready to open the portals. The Death Knight Teron Gorefiend, he stepped out onto the battlefield to buy their war chief some time, and a fierce battle between Tyrellian and Teron Gore took place. Light versus darkness, a battle in which Tyrellian nearly gave up hope, but his love for Illyria, it was so strong that the light vanquished the darkness. The path to Ner'zhul was clear, but Ner'zhul was done. He had gathered the energies, he created his portals, and he did not create just one portal to the so-called Promised Land. All across Draenor, portals popped up, making the already corrupted planets incredibly unstable. The orcs with him witnessed the portal in front of them, and the orc Obris, he could not believe what he saw. "This is our new world?" he asked Ner'zhul, since the little that they could see through the portal did not look promising. Something fluttered and looped up, there was a sickly light through the portal, it did not look good, and it did not seem like this was the so-called Promised Land that would give their people what they needed. But Ner'zhul was having none of it. He told Obris to be silent, and in that moment of distraction, the Eye of Dalaran trembled and flew out of his hands, straight into Khadgar's. The Alliance had finally reached Ner'zhul, and the orc was not ready to give up. How dare they interrupt his moment of absolute glory. He felt no fear, no worry, just absolute outrage as he lifted his hands with a cry and made the tortured rock and stone obey. The ground trembled beneath the Alliance feet. Wind and rain whipped around them, carrying them high in the air and slamming them mercilessly down on the unyielding stone. Ner'zhul took great pleasure in watching them suffer. It was with great effort that he turned around and yelled at the forces behind him to get through the portal that they had to go. Obris gaped at Ner'zhul. Surely the war chief didn't mean to leave all of their brothers and sisters behind. To do so would be the most gutless, cowardly thing to do. He tried to tell Ner'zhul, and as a reward, Ner'zhul extended his hand. Lightning balled in his palms and raced in a crackling arc towards the orcs, shooting down Obris and putting fear in the other orcs, making them obey. With the scepter of Sargeras still in his hands, Ner'zhul left his people, their dying planet behind, thinking that he and his troops would now go to the Promised Land. The shaman that had once unwittingly led his people on a very dark path, now he willingly made the choice to disconnect himself from the burden of caring for others. As the portal closed behind him, he had just enough time to gasp at what he saw. Khadgar saw the orc escape, and he feared that the Book of Medivh was still with Ner'zhul. He needed the book to close the portal, but thankfully it was Oberys who held the book, and he gave it to Khadgar since at least the mage had some kind of honor, and Ner'zhul left them all to die. With the Skull of Gul'dan and the Book of Medivh, Khadgar was able to close the portal on Draenor's side, and they had to do this, they had to stay behind, so that the destruction of Draenor would not flow through the portal and take Azeroth with it. Ner'zhul had created so many portals that the planet had become incredibly unstable. It was transforming into Outland as we know it today, so they had to close the portal. As Khadgar cast his spell, he tossed the skull and the book to a Wildhammer dwarf, telling him to get through the portal, get these artifacts back to the Kirin Tor. As the dwarf did what he was told, he flew through the portal. Khadgar, Illyria, Trellilian, Danav, all of them, they hid away in one of the rifts created by Ner'zhul as the Draenor transformed into Outland. When all was said and done, they came out of the portal. They didn't even recognize the planet anymore, and they made the promise that they would stop the orcs, they would build up their fortress, and we wouldn't see them until the Burning Crusade expansion. Ner'zhul's story, however, isn't quite done yet. The portal that he and the other orcs took to escape, it did not take them to a beautiful planet ready to be conquered. Instead, well, the book describes it in such a beautiful way. This is taken from beyond the Dark Portal. Ner'zhul. The orc shaman and horde war chief cried out at the sound of his name, his eyes flicking open. At once, the strange swirling nothingness all around him assaulted his senses, and he squeezed his eyes shut, hoping to force away the welter of sensation that threatened to drive him mad. Then, through the thrums and howls and cracklings, he heard it again. Ner'zhul! Blinking, he glanced around him. A short ways away, or so it seemed, though an instant later he would have sworn it was miles distant, Ner'zhul saw a dark form. It was shaped like an orc, and a longer look confirmed it, revealing green skin and tusks and long braids. Definitely an orc, and one Ner'zhul recognized as one of his Shadow Moon warriors. The warrior did not move. However, Ner'zhul thought he saw the other orc's chest rising and falling, but in this place he could not be sure of anything. Other shapes littered the strange maelstrom of light and shadow. All those who had followed him through the rift appeared to be here with him. The question was, where was here? Why hadn't the rift led them to another world? For whatever this place might be, Ner'zhul was sure it was not a normal world. What had happened? Why was he awake and aware while all the others were trapped in a deep sleep? A column of light rolled past, and for an instant Ner'zhul saw echoing glimmers around each of the other orcs and around himself. His eyes widened, then clamped shut as they overloaded from the sights assaulting him. But he knew what he had seen. They were trapped indeed. Something was binding them to this place. Ner'zhul. His name wafted across the strangeness yet again, but this time Ner'zhul felt something tug upon his chest and his limbs. The other orcs receded rapidly, or perhaps he was the one moving while they remained locked in place. It was impossible to tell here, but within minutes Ner'zhul was alone, the rest of his orcs only distant shadows. And then a larger, darker shadow fell across him, and he looked up into the face of Wrath itself. Before Ner'zhul hung a massive being arrayed in heavy armor of etched blood-red metal. The figure's face resembled that of a Draenei, intelligent looking and clever, but with bright red skin and a demonic cast. The creature had short curving horns rising from his high temples, and two strange-like tentacles extending below his mouth and well past the short beard covering his chin. Several earrings gleamed, and the creature's eyes glowed a deep yellow, and Ner'zhul knew him at once. "Great One!" Ner'zhul gasped, doing his best to bow, though his limbs were still bound somehow. "Ah, Ner'zhul, my unfaithful little servant," replied Kil'jaeden, Demon Lord of the Burning Legion. "Did you think I had forgotten about you?" "No, Great One, of course not." In truth, Ner'zhul had hoped so, and after the first few years had begun to think it true. Now his heart sank as the Demon Lord continued speaking. "Oh, I have been watching you closely all this time, Ner'zhul," Kil'jaeden assured him. "You cost me a great deal, you know." The Demon Lord laughed, a chilling, grating sound. And now you shall pay for such failure. Ner'zhul began, but his brain could barely formulate words. You could not leave well enough alone, Kil'jaeden finished for him. I knew that eventually you would try yet again to cause magics you were not ready to handle and did not understand. I waited, knowing that someday your own arrogance would bring you to me. He spread his gauntlet hands wide. And here we are. His eyes narrowed to mere slits. You have dreamed of death. You fought to escape it. Now, my little puppet, death will be all you ever know. Brief glimpses seared Ner'zhul's brain. Agony as pieces of flesh were torn from his still living body. The dead surrounding him, closing in on him, their blood on his hands. His own blood coating them. A morbid union of death, life, and excruciating torment. No! Ner'zhul shouted, thrashing about, trying everything to free himself from his visible bonds. My people still need me! Laughter shook the demon's powerful form, a horrible, eerie sound that made Ner'zhul's heart spasm. I know full well they mean nothing to you, so do not worry, the demon lord whispered, stabbing the tip of one long finger into Ner'zhul's cheek. The motion burned, sending spikes of heat and pain through Ner'zhul's flesh. There is no saving them. Do you not yet understand? Little puppets, you cannot even save yourself. Then he twisted that finger, the rest of his splayed hand latching onto Ner'zhul's face. And the orc shaman let his head fall back, a horrible scream wrenching its way out past his trembling lips. He knew it was but first of many. Last week, we talked about the story of Ner'zhul, from him being deceived by Kil'jaeden, all the way to the moment where Ner'zhul was tortured and given a new purpose by Kil'jaeden. This week, we're going to go back in time a few years before that moment, and we're going to talk about the story of Arthas, for these two characters would soon become very much connected. Let's begin, shall we? The moment young Prince Arthas is introduced into the storyline, he's at the age of 9, helping out at the Balnir farmstead. Yoren Balnir and his son Yerim, they're guiding one of their horses called Brightmane as she's giving birth, and the prince was right there to witness this miracle. You might say that sitting on the ground trying to soothe a horse as she's giving birth, that is no place for royalty, but Arthas liked to spend his time amongst the common people, something that made him beloved by all, and his father allowed it. As Brightmane's son came into the world, Arthas locked eyes and he immediately felt a connection. As disgusting as the miracle of birth had been, this very moment was pretty miraculous indeed. Just a few moments later, a horse rode up to the farm. Uther the Lightbringer had come to bring Arthas back to the palace. A rider from Southshore had brought ill news. Stormwind, at this time, it had fallen to the might of the first Orcish horde, and the survivors had come to Lordaeron to seek help. Anduin Lothar, champion of Stormwind, together with the mage Khadgar and even Prince Varian, who had survived the slaughter, they made their way to the capital city to discuss what to do next. Arthas wasn't allowed in on this meeting, but that didn't prevent the prince from hiding away on one of the balconies and listening in. Anduin Lothar told all present what had happened, that the orcs were a real threat to the world and that they had to unite. King Terenus, he showed compassion to young Prince Varian, and he agreed that they should gather the nobles and make their plans. After the meeting, Terenus left Varian in Arthas' care, and Arthas had a very hard time trying to think of something to say. What do you say to someone whose father was murdered by a friend? So the one thing that came to mind was telling Varian about the fowl that he'd seen born today. Emotions flitted across Varian's face: offense, disbelief, gratitude, yearning, understanding. Suddenly, the brown eyes filled with tears, and Varian Rin cried. Harsh, raking sounds of mourning for a father, a kingdom, a way of life that he hadn't been able to grieve until this moment. I hate winter, Varian sobbed. As the alliance of Lordaeron formed together to fight against the Horde, Arthas grew closer to Varian, and he found out that Varian was already a skilled fighter, while Arthas simply sucked. He was frustrated about this fact, thinking that his new friend and the situation with the orcs, it would be a good enough reason to start training seriously, but instead the exact opposite happened. Any and all that could wield a sword were summoned to rise up and defend the land, so Arthas' training was put on hold, while the alliance of Lordaeron, they managed to defeat the Horde and even capture their leader, Orgrim Doomhammer. Doomhammer was brought to the capital city to be placed as a prisoner within the Undercity, but he managed to break out only to be captured again. This time they decided to place him within one of the internment camps, these camps created to hold the orcs that surrendered after the first horde was defeated. The humans thought that this was a more humane alternative instead of outright executing the orcs, yet Doomhammer would not be caged and he broke out again. 2 years later, the Dark Portal reopened and the orcs returned for their second invasion, this time not to take the planet, this time they came to collect those powerful artifacts. 2 years and Arthas underwent a growth spurt. At the age of 11 he was a proper young man, yet his father still sheltered him and no real training was given. One day, Arthas found himself in the armory, where he and Varian they had sparred together with wooden training swords when they were young. He picked up one of the swords and he advanced to one of the old suits of armor, imagining it was one of the foul orcs that dared to enter their lands. "Think you pass here, foul orc? You are in Alliance lands. I will show you mercy this once. Be gone and never return." But orcs didn't surrender or honor, so Arthas lunged in as he had seen Varian do. Strike, block, duck in under the swing, bringing the sword all the way across the body, then whirl, and the sword seemed to take on a life of its own, and it flew across the room. Standing there was the dwarven ambassador Muradin Bronzebeard, who had just witnessed the future king of Lordaeron pretended to fight orcs and throw his sword clear across the room. The dwarf was as embarrassed as Arthas was, so he asked the prince where he could find his father, and he quickly left him behind. Arthas had never been more embarrassed in his life. He didn't even bother to put away the wooden swords. This encounter, however, it did show Muradin that Arthas was in desperate need of training, and after discussing it with King Terenas, Muradin told the prince that he would become his teacher and he would teach Arthas all that he knew. But if at any time he would feel like he was wasting his time, like Arthas wasn't doing his best, the training would be over. Arthas couldn't believe that he would be trained by a dwarf, and not any dwarf, someone like Muradin. He was very excited to begin, but before they could get to the training, his attention was drawn by a young girl who had showed up as a guest. Young Jaina Proudmoore was on her way to Dalaran to study arts of magic, and the moment he saw her, Arthas knew that this girl was something special. She looked like she could be a great friend, someone to have fun with, a girl who didn't mind going for a swim on a hot day or being hit by a snowball in the face. He was excited to get to know her, but when he looked over at his father and Uther, he recognized the look and he knew that he would probably not even have time to see her again before she left. His training with Muradin also began, and it was as rigorous and demanding as the dwarf had warned. Uther and Terenas, they also decided it was time that the prince's training was stepped up in other areas. His schedule became very tight. He would rise before dawn, grab a quick breakfast, and then go on an early ride with Muradin. The ride would end in a hike, always leaving the prince winded. Back home, a quick bath, lessons in history, mathematics, and calligraphy, a midday meal, then it was all afternoon in the chapel praying, meditating, and discussing the nature of paladins and the rigorous disciplines they must observe. Dinner followed, and then Arthas stumbled into bed to sleep the dreamless sleep of the utterly exhausted. As he feared, there was little time to get to know Jaina Proudmoore, so the prince came up with a brilliant idea. He suggested to his father to escort Miss Proudmoore to Dalaran himself. His father was really pleased to see his son step up to the responsibilities. Jaina was also very happy, and Arthas got a chance to get out of his duties and spend some time with Jaina. This way, everyone was happy. On the way to Dalaran, Arthas and Jaina decided to sneak away as the guards were asleep, and they checked out one of the internment camps where they held the orcs. When they got close, Arthas saw nothing but monsters in the orcs, yet Jaina thought that they looked sad. She also noticed that they had children, and she wondered if they truly belonged in the camps. Arthas snorted and told her that they were killers, who knew what they would do once they were released. Jaina sighed softly, and they sneaked back to their camp to continue the journey in the morning, and finally reach Dalaran. Jaina was very excited to begin her studies. She felt the luckiest girl in the world, but Arthas, he had no affinity for magic, so he didn't feel at home. Outsiders weren't usually welcome in the first place, which Jaina thought was a shame, since she thought that it would be very nice to see Arthas again. As she spoke those words, she blushed, and for a moment Arthas forgot about the intimidation of the city, and he heartily agreed that it would be very nice to see Jaina Proudmoore again. Very nice indeed. For 3 years, Jaina did her thing in Dalaran, while Arthas focused on his own studies and training. At the age of 14, he was finally able to overcome his trainer and defeat Muradin. All the while, the training had been brutal. He had stubbornly refused any offers of healing, insisting that the pain was part of the process. And for that stubborn refusal, to whine or to quit, he was rewarded twofold. He learned well, and he won the respect of Muradin Bronzebeard.
How I miss those endless days in Lordaeron. Sharpening your skill with this dull blade. Forging you into a weapon meant to withstand the demands of a great destiny. Heh. You sure put them skills to use, didn't you, lad?
Now you might have wondered at the start of the video why I spent so much time talking about Arthas in the stable about the moment that the fowl was born, but that's because the birth of that particular fowl would play a critical role in the rest of the prince's life. The horse was destined to belong to Arthas. He knew that from the moment that they locked eyes, and he was not going to be used for riding into battle. That was done by a completely different breed of horse. No, this one would be part of ceremonies and pleasure trips. He had toyed with names like Snowfall or Starlight, but in the end he decided to follow the informal tradition of Lordaeron Knights, and he gave his steed the name of Equality. Where Uthras' mount was called Steadfast, his father's Courageous, Arthas had decided to go with Invincible. One afternoon, the prince found himself having some free time, as his father was away on a diplomatic mission to Stromgarde, and Uthra had gone with him. Even with the winter chill in the air and autumn's last glorious days were gone, Invincible and Arthas found themselves riding down the glades. Snow started falling, and the next part is so crucial, described in such a beautiful way. This is taken from the novel Arthas, Rise of the Lich King. It was starting to snow again now, not the soft fat flakes that drifted lazily down, but small hard crystals that stung. Arthas frowned and pressed on, a little further, then he would turn back, he told himself. He might even stop at the Balnir farm. Had it been a while since he'd been there, Yoram and Yarim would likely be interested to see the magnificent horse that the gawky little cult had grown into. The impulse, having struck, now demanded to be obeyed, and Arthas turned Invincible with a subtle pressure from his left leg. The horse wheeled, obedient and completely in tune with his master's desires. The snow was picking up, tiny needles digging into his exposed skin, and Arthas pulled the cape up over his head for a little more protection. Invincible shook his head, his skin twitching as it did when he was being annoyed by insects in the summer. He galloped down the path, stretching his neck forward, enjoying the exertion every bit as much as Arthas. They were coming up on the jump soon, and shortly after that a warm stable for the steed and a hot mug of tea for his rider before they headed back to the palace. Arthas' face was starting to become numb with the cold, and his hands in their fine leather gloves weren't much better. He tightened his chilled hands over the reins, forcing his fingers to bend, and gathered himself as Invincible leaped. No, he reminded himself, flew! They flew over this jump like... Except they didn't fly. At the last minute, Arthas felt the hideous sensation of Invincible's rear hoof slipping away on the icy stone, and the horse flailed, neighing, his legs frantically trying to get a secure footing on thin air. Arthas' throat was suddenly raw, and he realized that he was screaming as Jackstone, not smooth snow-encrusted grass, rushed up to meet him with lethal speed. He pulled hard on the reins, as if that could do something, as if anything could do something. The sound cut through his stupor, and he blinked his way back to consciousness with the bone-chilling shriek of a beast in agony clawing at his brain. He couldn't move at first, though his body spasmed of its own accord, trying to move towards the awful cries. Finally, he was able to sit up. Pain shot through him, and he added his own gasp of agony to the hideous cacophony, and he realized he'd probably broken at least one rib, probably more. The snow had picked up and was coming down hard and heavy now. He could barely see 3 feet in front of him. He shut out the pain, craning his neck, trying to find... Invincible. His eyes was drawn to movement, and the widening pool of crimson that melted the snow, that steamed in the cold. No, Arthas whispered and struggled to his feet. The world went black around the edges, and he almost lost consciousness again, but through sheer will hung on. Slowly, he made his way to the panicked animal, struggling against the pain and the diving wind and snow that threatened to knock him over. Invincible was churning up the bloodied snow with 2 powerful unharmed rear legs and 2 shattered forelegs. Arthas felt his stomach heave at the sight of the limbs, once so long and straight and clean and powerful, hang at odd angles as Invincible kept trying and failing to stand. Then the image was mercifully blurred by the snow and the rush of hot tears that spilled down his cheeks. He slugged towards his horse, sobbing, dropping to his knees beside the maddened animal and trying to do what? This was no scratch. To be quickly bound so that Invincible could lead to a warm stable and hot mash? Arthas reached for the animal's head, wanted to touch him, to calm him somehow, but Invincible was manic with agony. And he kept screaming, "Help! There were priests and Sir Uther. Maybe they could heal." Pain, greater than physical, shot through the youth. The bishop had gone with his father to Stromgarde, as had Uther. There might be priests in another village, but Arthas didn't know where, and with the storm, he shrank back from the animal, covering his ears and closing his eyes, sobbing so that his whole body shook. With the storm, he could never find a healer, before Invincible either died of his injuries or froze to death. Arthas wasn't even sure he could find the Balnir homestead, even though it could not be far. The world was white, everywhere, save where the dying horse, who had trusted him enough to leap off an icy embankment, lay churning up a steaming crimson pool. Arthas knew what he had to do, and he couldn't do it. He would never know how long he sat there, weeping, trying to shut out the sight and sound of his beloved horse in agony, until finally Invincible's struggle slowed. He lay in the snow, his sides heaving, his eyes rolling in torment. Arthas couldn't feel his face or limbs, but somehow he managed to move toward the beast. Every breath was agony, and he welcomed the pain. This was his fault. His fault. He took the great head in his lap, and for a brief, merciful moment, he wasn't sitting in the snow with a wounded beast, but sitting in a stable while a blood mare gave birth. For that moment, everything was all just beginning and not coming to the shocking, sickening, avoidable end. His tears fell on the horse's broad cheek. Invincible trembled, his brown eyes wide with now silent pain. Arthas removed his gloves and he ran his hand along the pink-grey muzzle, feeling the warmth of Invincible's breath against his hands. Then, slowly, he eased the horse's head from his lap, got to his feet and fumbled with the warmed hand for his sword. His feet sank in the red puddle of melted snow as he stood over the fallen animal. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm so sorry." Invincible regarded him calmly, trustingly, as if he somehow understood what was about to happen and the need for it. It was more than Arthas could bear, and for a moment tears again clouded his vision. He blinked them back hard. Arthas lifted the sword and brought it straight down. He did this right at least, pierced Invincible's great heart with a single strong blow from arms that should have been too chilled to do so. He felt the sword pierce skin, flesh, scrape against bone, and impale itself into the earth below. Invincible arced once, then shuddered and lay still. Yoram and Yarim found him there sometime later, after the snow had tapered off, curled up tightly against the cooling corpse of a once glorious animal brimming with life and energy. As the elder man bent to pick him up, Arthas cried out with pain. "Sorry, lad," Yoram said, his voice almost unbearably kind, "for hurting you, and for the accident." "Yes," Arthas said weakly, "the accident." He lost his footing. "And no wonder in this weather. That storm came on quickly. You're lucky you're alive. Come on, we'll get you inside and send someone to the palace." As he shifted in the farmer's strong grip, Arthas said, "Bury him? Here, so I can come visit?" Balnir exchanged glances with his son, then nodded. "Aye, of course. He was a noble steed." Arthas craned his neck to look at the body of the horse he had named Invincible. He would let them all think it was an accident, because he could not bear to tell anyone what he had done. And he made a vow then and there that if anyone else ever needed protection, that if sacrifices had to be made for the welfare of others, he would do it. Whatever it takes, he fought. This moment, unable to save Invincible, the vow to do whatever it takes to protect those that need it, to sacrifice whatever for the welfare of others, it changed the prince, and it played a huge part in the choices he made. Summer was full in blaze, and Prince Arthas and his entourage, they'd made way through Stormwind towards the Cathedral of Light. Today's the day the prince has been looking forward to all his life, the day that he would become a member of the Order of the Silver Hand. Yet, he felt a nagging sense that he didn't deserve the honor that was about to be bestowed upon him, and in a rare moment, Arthas had spoken of his feelings to Uther the Lightbringer.
Lad, no one feels ready.
No one feels he deserves it, and you know why? Because no one does. It's grace, pure and simple. We are inherently unworthy, simply because we're human. And as all human beings, I and elves and dwarves and all other races are flawed. But the light loves us anyway. It loves us for what we sometimes can rise to in rare moments. It loves us for what we can do to help others. And it loves us because we can help it, share its message by striving daily to be worthy, even though we understand that we can't ever truly become so. So stand there today, as I did, feeling that you can't possibly deserve it or ever be worthy, and know that you're in the same place every single paladin has ever stood.
This reply both startled and comforted the prince. As he went through the ritual, he was accepted by the light, and he became an official paladin amongst the Order of the Silver Hand. Varian Rin, Jaina Proudmoore, all those gathered applauded and congratulated him. He was now 19 years old, and he didn't feel like simply lingering in the Palace of Lordran or do boring state visits. He wanted to do something fun, something that his position, his abilities would earn him, and he knew exactly what he wanted that something to be. Within Dalaran, Jaina Proudmoore had become quite good at her craft, and she was even chosen to become the apprentice of Archmage Antonidas. The High Elf Prince Kil'jaeden Sunstrider was very interested in the young mage, and he openly courted her. He'd even invited her to come and visit him in Quel'Thalas, but unfortunately for the prince, Jaina found Kil'jaeden to be more intimidating than someone she could actually fall for. She felt no such intimidation when her longtime friend made a surprise visit. Remember that Dalaran didn't usually allow strangers to come in, but the prince had been able to convince them that he was going to use his time there to study more about the history, the nature of magic, and other things that a king needed to know about. In truth though, he was actually there because he wanted to see Jaina, and studying was just extra. Arthas approached Jaina one day with 2 saddled horses to go out for a nice picnic together on a beautiful day, and at first Jaina tried to tell him that she needed to study, that she didn't have time for stuff like this, but Arthas was able to change her mind.
You'll be a magnificent king one day. No one can seem to deny you anything.
He laughed, and together they rode out, shared a simple but delicious picnic, and fell asleep in the heat of the day. When Jaina woke up, she didn't see Arthas anywhere around her, and her mind quickly shot to the threats surrounding them. There were still orcs on the loose, yet a mountain cat or a bear could just as easily take care of them. She went over the spells that she'd learned in her mind, until the attack came, sudden and silent. A thump against the back of her neck, and cold wetness was the first and only clue she had. Arthas had gone out to collect some snowballs from the mountain, to have the snowball fight that he dreamed of ever since they were young. Laughing cold and wet, he hugged her, and told her that he knew it all those years ago. He knew that she would be a girl to have fun with, someone who wouldn't mind going for a swim on a hot summer day, or getting a snowball in the face. His arm encircled her as firmly as an iron band. He continued to touch her face, trailing strong calloused fingers down the curve of her cheek. Jaina, he said quietly, and she shivered, but not from the cold, not this time. It was not proper. She should move back. Instead, she lifted her face and closed her eyes. The kiss was gentle at first, soft and sweet, the first Jaina had ever known. From that moment on, the young lovers would steal moments here and there to sneak a kiss or a hug, since openly loving each other, that would just feed the rumor mill. As Jaina came back from practicing her fire spells one day, Arthas was waiting for her, and he dragged her into the shadows for a loving embrace. What they didn't know was that Kil'jaeden had followed Jaina to bring back the tome that she had dropped on the floor, and as he caught them in their act, he was furious. Anger and outrage fairly crackled around the mage. He was powerful, and Arthas knew that if it came to it, he wouldn't stand a chance. Kil'jaeden kept his composure though, and with clenched fist he hissed,
Ashamed of her, are you, Arthas? Is she only worth your time and attention if no one knows about her?
Arthas' eyes narrowed. I had fought to avoid the ravages of the rumor mill, he said quietly. You know how those things work, Kale, don't you? Someone says something, and next thing you know, it's believed to be true. I will protect her reputation by...
Protect?
Kil'jaeden barked the words.
If you cared about her, you would court her openly, proudly. Any man would.
He looked at Jaina, and the anger was gone, replaced by a fleeting expression of pain. Then that too disappeared, and Jaina looked down.
I will leave you two to your tryst, and do not fear, I will say nothing.
Kil'jaeden kept his word, and their relationship continued. Although there had been no public announcement, they both knew that their parents had spoke with one another, and that there was an agreement to let the courtship continue. So it was that Arthas, already beloved by his people, was sent on more and more diplomatic matters, while Jaina was usually chosen to deliver messages from Dalaran to the capital city. Holidays and special celebrations were also cherished moments where they could be together, so Arthas traveled to Jaina for the Midsummer Fire Festival, as she joined him during the celebration of Hollow's End. It's tradition during this time to burn the Wickerman and burn away anything you do not wish to take with you into the quiet, deep reflection time provided by winter's enforced inactivity. As a special surprise, Arthas introduced Jaina to his countrymen, and he asked her to give them all a show. Fire itself spawned from her hands, instantly setting the Wickerman ablaze, and the crowd cheered. Arthas leaned in close and whispered that she did a spectacular job, so good in fact that they'll demand her to come back each year to light the Wickerman again. She turned to look at him and asked,
Would that be a problem?
Arthas caught his breath and he regarded her. She'd always been attracted to him and he'd liked her from the moment they'd met, but now he couldn't help but see her, quite literally, in a whole new light. It took a moment for him to find his voice and he softly said, No, it wouldn't be a problem at all. They joined the celebration until Arthas led Jaina back to his quarters. They kissed and Jaina whispered,
Are we ready for this?
I am, if you are, he whispered back. There have been other opportunities for Arthas to share this moment with someone. There was Tarifa, for example, as he went to inspect the Orcish gladiator Thrall at the internment camp. She was sent by Blackmorn to make the prince feel at home, yet he had declined her, and she had not been the first either. But Jaina was special, and he was ready to bring this girl the rest of the way into his heart. Under the light of the Wickerman, they shared their love, and later, when the Wickerman had finally burned out, Jaina told the prince that no one seemed to be able to deny him anything, least of all her. He clutched her to him then, a sudden cold shivering over him, though he had no idea why. Don't deny me, Jaina. Don't ever deny me, please. She looked up at him, eyes glittering in the cool moonlight.
I never would, Arthas. Never.
The two young lovers continued their relationship, and during the Feast of Winterfell, it became clear that to the family, Jaina was becoming more and more than just the daughter of the ruler of Kal-Taras. Arthas thought to himself that it was only the logical next step, yet the thought of it all made him feel uneasy. When Jaina jokingly told him that the children will almost certainly be blonde, the bomb inside exploded. He didn't feel ready for this. He was afraid that he would ruin it all. What if he would become a bad husband or a bad king? What if, and with those thoughts racing through his mind, he came to the conclusion that he wasn't ready yet. Not ready for children, not ready for the weight of the crown, the relationship with Jaina. He tried to explain that he wasn't ready, and of course she was hurt. She had even asked him if they were ready for this on the night that they came together. But she took a deep breath and she steadied herself. It was alright. She honestly didn't understand it, but it would be alright eventually. They attended the ball together, despite how awkward and painful it felt. Attending a ball together after just breaking up, that must have been horrible. The prince looked out at the blanket of white snow and the moon-silvered lake, and he wondered to himself why everything bad seemed to happen during winter. Breaking off with Jaina would soon be the least of his worries, since this brings us close to the events of Warcraft 3. That story I'll save for next week, the events of Warcraft 3, but before we leave for today, we do need to talk about Ner'zhul and Kel'thuzad. Remember that the Orcish shaman Ner'zhul, he ended up in front of Kil'jaeden, where he was tortured for a while, until Kil'jaeden came up with a new plan and purpose. The Orcs' failure to conquer the world for the Burning Legion, it forced Kil'jaeden to create a new army to sow chaos throughout the kingdoms of Azeroth. This new army could not be allowed to fall prey to the same petty rivalries and infighting that had plagued the Horde. It would have to be merciless and single-minded in its mission. This time, Kil'jaeden could not afford to fail. Holding Ner'zhul's spirit helpless in stasis, Kil'jaeden gave him one last chance to serve the Legion or suffer eternal torment. Once again, Ner'zhul recklessly agreed to the demon's pact. His spirit was placed within a specially crafted block of diamond hard ice gathered from the far reaches of the twisted nether. Encased within the frozen cask, Ner'zhul felt his consciousness expand 10,000-fold. Warped by the demonic chaotic powers, Ner'zhul became a spectral being of unfathomable power. At that moment, the orc known as Ner'zhul was shattered forever, and the Lich King was born. Kil'jaeden then cast Ner'zhul's icy cask back into the world of Azeroth. The hardened crystal streaked across the night sky and smashed into the desolate Arctic continent of Northrend, burying itself deep within the ice-crowned glacier. The frozen crystal, warped and scarred by its violent descent, it came to resemble a throne, and Ner'zhul's vengeful spirit soon stirred within, linked to the armor, the blade Frostmourne, and the helm of domination. From the frozen throne, Ner'zhul began to experiment with his newfound powers. He was able to touch the minds of Northrend's inhabitants, and he was able to enslave them. He was able to cause the plague of undeath, which did not only kill, but it also converted the fallen into undead servants. For months he gathered forces, yet his conquest did not go unchallenged. The Nerubians, they were immune to his mind control and even to his plague, yet there were other means of converting them. The War of the Spider erupted. With the aid of the Dreadlords and Ner'zhul's undead warriors, the Lich King invaded Azul Nerub, and he brought the temple crashing down upon the Spider Lord's heads.
I once ruled Azul Nerub. Then came a war I could not win. I was forced into servitude.
Though the Nerubians were immune to his plague, Ner'zhul's growing necromantic powers, it allowed him to raise the Spider Warriors' corpses and bend them to his will. As a testament to their tenacity and fearlessness, Ner'zhul adopted the Nerubians' distinctive architectural style for his own fortresses and structures. Left to rule his kingdom unopposed, the Lich King began preparing for his true mission in the world. Reaching out into human lands with his vast consciousness, the Lich King called out to any dark soul that would listen, and Archmage Kel'thuzad was one of them, willing to embrace the whispers.
I was cast out by my comrades, exiled, forced to wander the frozen wastes. But I was not alone, not entirely. The voice, now my only companion, guided me to my destination. Strange, nightmarish creatures awaited me at the entrance. I felt my blood run cold as Icecrown itself. Inside, I bore witness to horrific acts, demonstrations of power that could be mine for the asking. Terrified, I ran, but did not get far. All too soon, my choice was made. Too late did I realize that such power does not come without a price.
Ner'zhul convinced him to come to Northrend, and even though the in-game book, Kel'thuzad and the Forming of the Scourge, it claims that Kel'thuzad gave himself up willingly, his short story tells a different tale. As the fallen Nerubian king Anub'arak gives Kel'thuzad a tour of Nexramas, the mage begins to doubt. The things that are shown to him, they were terrifying and sickening. There was a demonstration of the plague where a human woman and a human man, they were locked inside a cage. The female was sick. She begged Kel'thuzad to show mercy, to burn her body and end her misery, but Kel'thuzad, he simply looked away and he whispered to Anub'arak to make her quiet. In response, Anub'arak pierced her heart and dropped the corpse on the floor, causing the man to howl with anguish, but that was just the start. The female rose as an undead servant. She told her husband to get away from her, that she would hurt him. She pushed him away, causing him to fly against the cell bars and slid down. She was unable to control herself as the transformation was completed, and she leaped at her husband, lashing out, baring her teeth. The man screamed, and blood spurted onto the cell floor. Kel'thuzad flinched away. Closing his eyes didn't help. He could still hear unspeakable sounds. Ripping, shredding, chewing. A soft, wretched mewling that he very much feared meant that the undead woman was aware of her actions on some level, but unable to stop herself. Sickened and horrified, he teleported out of Naxxramas altogether. He staggered a little distance away and he threw up. Finding a patch of unsullied snow, he scooped up handfuls and scrubbed viciously at his mouth and face. It felt as if he would never be clean again. What had he gotten himself involved in? There was no escape though, as Kel'thuzad was escorted back in front of Ner'zhul, who explained to him that his powers were beyond comprehension, that he could read Kel'thuzad's mind as if he was reading a book. No schemes or future plans of overthrowing the Lich King would ever be accomplished, and not even death is a certainty when dealing with the Lich King. Serving this spectral being, the Lich King, as Kel'thuzad was beginning to think of him, would surely bring Kel'thuzad great power. and damn him for all eternity. But that knowledge came far too late. Besides, damnation, it had little meaning without the prospect of true death. I am yours. I swear it, he said hoarsely, and Kel'thuzad pledged his loyalty to the Lich King. He worked on using his connections, his fortune, the power of illusion, persuasion, sickness and force to spread the plague across the lands of Lordaeron and establish the Lich King's hold upon Azeroth.
We've received reports that the orcs are regrouping. Certainly the recent attacks against the internment camps are evidence enough. Agreed. The Horde is on the move.
This is absurd. My nation will not stand by and watch as the Horde masses on our very doorstep.
The orcs are not our primary concern here. How many times must I repeat myself?
King Terenus, you must heed my warning.
This plague that has gripped the Northlands could have dire ramifications.
Wizards are just paranoid. Let's keep all this in perspective. Even if this plague does pose a threat to us, what are you proposing that we do?
It is simple. As I have said, the Kirin Tor are already prepared to place the villages under strict quarantine.
I will not institute quarantine without proof of your claims, Ambassador. The people of Lordaeron have suffered enough without becoming prisoners in their own lands.
Yet prisoners they are, good king.
What is the meaning of this? Who are you?
Humanity is in peril. The tides of darkness have come again, and the whole world is poised upon the brink of war.
Enough of this. Guards, remove this madman.
Hear me. The only hope for your people is to travel west, to the forgotten lands of Kalimdor.
Travel west? Are you mad?
Old Ambassador, I don't know who you are or what you believe, but this is not the time for rambling prophets. Our lands are beset by conflict, but it shall be we who decide how best to protect our people, not you. Now, be gone!
The Prophet Medivh is trying to warn the world about the coming invasion of the Burning Legion, and he tells them all to travel west. King Terenus is not willing to listen and tells Medivh that they'll be the ones to decide how best to protect their people. In the meantime, reports are becoming in that a plague is spreading across the lands. Archmage Antonidas also received a visit from Medivh, but he agrees with King Terenus and he sends the Prophet away. To investigate the plague, to find out what's going on, he sends his apprentice Jaina Proudmoore to team up with Prince Arthas, and together they would get to the bottom of this mystery.
We must help her! Stay your blade, Captain. She can take care of herself. Gentlemen, meet Miss Jaina Proudmoore, Special Agent to the Kirin Tor, and one of the most talented sorceresses in the land. Looks like you haven't lost your touch. It's good to see you again, Jaina.
You too, Arthas. It's been a while since a prince escorted me anywhere.
Their reunion is a little bit awkward at first, but Arthas can't sleep at night and he decides to approach Jaina and talk. He had missed her very much and she felt exactly the same. So after all was said and done, after they found out what was going on, saved the world, after their job was done, they would work on new beginnings. They'd see it through together, whatever it took.
What were those creatures, Sergeant?
Undead, my lord. This whole village has gone mad. We did our best to defend the villagers, but...
We'll get to the bottom of this.
It's as if the land around that granary is dying.
Could the grain itself be plagued?
Let's hope not. Those crates bear the regional seal of Anderhal. the distribution center for the northern boroughs. If this grain can spread the plague, there's no telling how many villages might be affected.
Their team found out that the plague was being spread through the grain, so they did their very best to stop it from spreading any further. They even encountered necromancers and their leader Kel'thuzad, who told them about the Cult of the Damned, the Dreadlord Morgannus, and he told them to leave well enough alone, that their curiosity would be the end of them. But Arthas could not walk away. Remember the promise he had made when he failed Invincible? He would stop at nothing to try and protect his people. So he pushed Jaina and his men until eventually they got their hands on Kel'thuzad.
Naive fool. My death will make little difference in the long run. For now, the scourging of this land begins.
Killing the leader of the cult did not prevent the citizens from eating the grain that had already been shipped out. At Hearthglen, they figured out that the plague was not only meant to kill, it also converted those who died from it into the undead. Arthas became obsessed about stopping all of this, about saving his people. He became very distant and unwilling to listen to those close to him, like Uther and Jaina, and not even the Prophet Medivh was able to push him away from this path. He had to stop Morgannus, he had to destroy each crate of grain that they could find, but at Stratholme they made a terrible discovery.
Glad you could make it, Uther.
Watch your tone with me, boy. You may be the prince, but I'm still your superior as a paladin.
As if I could forget. Listen, Uther. There's something about the plague you should know. Oh no. We're too late. These people have all been infected. They may look fine now, but it's just a matter of time before they turn into the undead. This entire city must be purged.
What? How can you even consider that? There's got to be some other way.
Damn it, Uther. As your future king, I order you to purge this city!
You are not my king yet, boy. Nor would I obey that command even if you were.
Then I must consider this an act of treason.
Treason? Have you lost your mind, Arthas?
Lord Uther, by my right of succession and the sovereignty of my crown, I hereby relieve you of your command and suspend your paladins from service.
Arthas, you can't just...
It's done! Those of you who have the will to save this land, follow me! The rest of you, get out of my sight!
You've just crossed a terrible threshold, Arthas.
Jaina?
I'm sorry, Arthas. I can't watch you do this.
Jaina tried to convince Arthas not to go through with this, tried to buy some time to think of alternative options, but he saw no other way. He even asked her what she would want, a clean death as a living, thinking human, or to be raised as an undead to attack anything you've ever loved. Jaina knew deep down that he was right, that she would rather die as a living being, but that's her personal choice, and they couldn't make that choice for everyone. There were innocents in that city, children even, yet Arthas had made his choice. Uther, Jaina, and some of the men, they did not agree with what the prince was about to do, so they turned away and they turned their back on him. Jaina, despite her promise, had denied him, yet some of the men, they actually agreed with the prince. They'd rather be cut into 1,000 pieces than be turned into the undead, so they went about their gruesome job of slaughtering the men, women and children inside the city. Arthas thought that it would get easier as he pushed on, but it only became harder. The light on his weapon started to dim. The citizens tried to fight back, but they were no match against trained soldiers and a trained paladin. Eventually, the Dreadlord Morgannus called out to the prince and taunted him to gather his forces and meet him in the Arctic lands of Northrend.
Your journey has just begun, young prince. Gather your forces and meet me in the Arctic land of Northrend. It is there that we shall settle the score between us. It is there that your true destiny...
I'll hunt you to the ends of the earth if I have to. Do you hear me? To the ends of the earth!
In Northrend, Arthas found Myrddin Bronzebeard fighting against the undead. He had not expected to find his old friend and mentor all the way up in the cold lands, but it was a sight for sore eyes. Muradin explained the reason why they were there, that his people had always been interested in rare items. The dwarf had been to Northrend many times before, and they found that there's a force growing in Northrend, which Muradin believes will not be satisfied with just sitting there. He has a feeling that this power is also behind the undead, so they're trying to discover what exactly is going on. Arthas explains to Muradin what had happened back home, his people turning into the undead, the choices he had to make, but he didn't tell Muradin all the details about what happened at Stratholme. He wasn't certain if Muradin would understand the awful necessity of what Arthas had been forced to do.
Alright, Muradin. What were you doing up here anyway?
Well, lad, there's an ancient waygate that lies somewhere in this glacial wasteland. Supposedly it transports you to a hidden vault where a rune blade named Frostmourne is held. We came here to recover Frostmourne.
The dwarf explains that they're searching for a very special artifact, a rune blade called Frostmourne, and hearing the name makes Arthas think back to a dream he had about a ruined blade which he used to stab Invincible with. Instead of ending the beast's life as he had done in his real life, Invincible rose up even stronger than before. He was certain that finding the blade and getting his revenge was his destiny, so they would help out Muradin with finding the artifacts, and Muradin would help them with fighting against Mal'Ganis. They worked on setting up a base, but back home, King Teron had found out what Arthas had done, and he did not agree with his son's choices.
I apologize, emissary, but the prince is away on an errand. What brings you to this desolate place?
By royal edict, you men are to return to Lordaeron immediately. Lord Uther has convinced the king to recall this expedition.
We're to just pick up and leave?
That's correct. My men report that the roads from here to the shore are held by the undead. You'll need to find an alternate route back to your ships.
To hell with the undead. We'll cut our way through the woods, men.
Captain, why are the guards not at their posts?
Well, my lord, your father had our troops recalled at Lord Uther's request.
Uther had my troops recalled? Damn it! If my warriors abandon me, I'll never defeat Mal'Ganis. The ships must be burned before the men reach the shore.
Isn't that a bit much, lad?
Burned down to their frames. No one goes home until our job here is done. We'll need more men to fight our way through the undead.
I've come across a few mercenary camps up here. Perhaps we can hire a few of them.
Damn Uther for forcing me to do this. Well done. Only one ship remains.
Let's do this!
Prince Arthas? Quickly, my warriors! These murderous creatures have burned our ships and robbed you of your way home. Slay them all in the name of Lordaeron. Damn beasts!
Kill them all! Our ships are ruined. What will we do now?
Listen to me, all of you. There is no way home for any of us save through victory. In this land, we will stand or fall together. Now, return to the base and man your posts.
Muradin couldn't believe his eyes. This was not the same Arthas that he had trained, that joined the Order of the Silver Hands, the future king of Lordaeron. Was vengeance all that important to Arthas?
Spare me, Muradin. You weren't there to see what Mal'Ganis did to my homeland.
The Dark Lord said you would come. This is where your journey ends, boy. Trapped and freezing at the roof of the world, with only death to sing the tale of your doom.
This looks bad. We're completely surrounded.
There's still one chance. Help me claim Frostmourne. If it's as powerful as you said, it might tilt the scales in our favor.
I have a bad feeling about this, lad. But I promised I'd see this through.
Arthas and Muradin left their troops behind to defend the base, while they went out to find Frostmourne.
Behold, Muradin, our salvation. Frostmourne.
Halt, lad. There's an inscription on the dais. It's a warning. It says, "Whomsoever takes up this blade shall wield power eternal. Just as the blade rends flesh, so must power scar the spirit." Oh, I should have known. The blade is cursed. Let's get the hell out of here.
I would gladly bear any curse to save my homeland.
Leave it be, Arthas. Forget this business and lead your men home.
Damn the men! Nothing shall prevent me from having my revenge, old friend. Not even you. Now, I call out to the spirits of this place. I will give anything or pay any price, if only you will help me save my people.
Muradin was knocked out, and for a moment Arthas desperately tried to call on the light to save his old friends, but the blade, it was whispering to him. The Lich King was calling, and the power of Frostmourne, his vengeance upon Mal'Ganis, that was all that mattered. As the prince took the blade, a cold shot through him, shivering up his arm, spreading over his body and into his heart. It was painful for a moment, and he knew a hint of alarm, and then suddenly it was all right. It was all right. Frostmourne was his, and he was its, and its voice was speaking, whispering, caressing inside his mind, as if it had always been there. He left his old friend behind in the snow, and he claimed his revenge.
So, you've taken up Frostmourne at the expense of your comrades' lives, just as the Dark Lord said you would. You're stronger than I thought.
You waste your breath, Mal'Ganis. I heed only the voice of Frostmourne now.
You hear the voice of the Dark Lord. He whispers to you through the blade you wield. What does he say, young human? What does the Dark Lord of the Dead tell you now?
He tells me that the time for my vengeance has come.
What? He can't possibly mean to...
It is finished.
The prince left his troops behind as he wandered into the frozen wastelands of Northrend, listening to the maddening voice of Frostmourne. The blade was created by the Dreadlords, was tossed out by Ner'zhul from the ice that encased him. He had planned for all of this, for Arthas to become his champion, for the blade to steal a piece of his soul, turning the former paladin into the first of the Death Knights created by the Lich King. Some of his men were turned to the Death Knights as well, and with his soul cast aside, his sanity shattered, Arthas led the Scourge back home, where they were greeted with open arms.
Ah, my son.
You no longer need to sacrifice for your people. You no longer need to bear the weight of your crown. I've taken care of everything. Succeeding you, Father.
This kingdom shall fall, and from the ashes shall arise a new order that will shake the very foundations of the world.
All those gathered to welcome the prince home were slaughtered and converted. We don't know what happened to Arthas' sister Khaylia or his mother, so perhaps they survived the fall of their kingdom. It didn't matter much to Arthas though. He left the killing to his servants while making his way to the grave of an old friend. It had been 7 years since he was forced to put down Invincible, but now he had the power to make it alright again. He lifted his hands, pulling the no longer Deathwing from its slumber in the cool dark earth. Invincible was his again. It was all part of his destiny, yet fate seemed to have a sense of humor, since Ner'zhul was not just sent back to create a few undead. He was sent back with a mission to get the world ready for another invasion of the Burning Legion, and to get this started, they had to bring back the necromancer Kel'thuzad. Under the watchful eyes of the Dreadlord Tychondrius, they brought together the Cult of the Damned, they took out several of the paladins, and they gathered Kel'thuzad's remains from Anderhal. The remains were badly decomposed though, so they couldn't be transported as they were. They had to collect a very special container, which was currently in the possession of Arthas' former mentor and friend.
Your father ruled this land for 70 years, and you've ground it to dust in a matter of days.
Very dramatic, Uther. Give me the urn, and I'll make sure you die quickly.
The urn holds your father's ashes, Arthas. What? Were you hoping to piss on them one last time before you left his kingdom to rot?
I didn't know what it held. Nor does it matter. I'll take what I came for one way or another.
Uther did not earn the Lightbringer title for nothing, and he nearly took out Arthas in this fight. Yet the Runeblade Frostmourne, combined with the powers of the Lich King, they were able to snuff out even the brightest of lights.
I dearly hope that there's a special place in hell waiting for you, Arthas.
We may never know, Uther. I intend to live forever.
After pouring out the contents of the urn, the ashes of King Terenus took flight, shouting the Death Knights and making it hard to breathe, making the fallen prince gag and drop to his knees. A moment later, he composed himself and he ordered one of his scourge to place the remains of the necromancer in the urn, ready to be transported to the magical city of Quel'Thalas. In order to resurrect Kel'thuzad as a Lich, they had to find an incredibly powerful magical source, and as luck would have it, the High Elves of Quel'Thalas, they had the Sunwell, which would be perfect for the job. This city had been able to stand up against trolls, against the orcs riding dragons, but this time there was a traitor from within, Darkandravir, who helped Arthas with gaining access into the kingdom. The High Elves, amongst them Lady Liadrin, Ranger General Sylvanas Windrunner, they tried to stop the army of undead that was marching upon their lands, literally leaving a scar behind them as they marched. They did their very best, but nothing would stand in the way of death, and Sylvanas was not even granted the peace of the afterlife.
Finish it. I deserve a clean death.
After all you've put me through, woman, the last thing I'll give you is the peace of death.
No, you wouldn't dare.
Transformed into a banshee, she was forced to obey Arthas and watched as he slaughtered the rest of her people and even her king and Astarion Sunstrider. Her kingdom fell as Arthas claimed the Sunwell.
Citizens of Silvermoon, I have given you ample opportunities to surrender, but you have stubbornly refused. Know that today, your entire race and your ancient heritage will end. Death itself has come to claim the high home of the elves. Now arise, Kel'thuzad, and serve the Lich King once again.
I am reborn as promised. The Lich King has granted me eternal life.
With Kel'thuzad resurrected as a Lich, the next step was to bring Archimonde into the world, and to do this, they had to collect the Book of Medivh, which contained incantations powerful enough to summon the Demon Lords. This book was kept in the magical city of Durotan, and as Arthas and the Scourge arrived, Jaina pleaded with Antonidas to let her stay and help. Maybe she could reason with Arthas, maybe she could do something, but the Archmage, he told her to go. One more or less would make very little difference, and Jaina had other duties now. She was told by the Prophet Medivh to lead the survivors of Lordaeron, so her duties, they called her elsewhere, while Arthas murdered those inside, amongst them Archmage Antonidas. He claimed the book, and eventually Kel'thuzad summoned Archimonde into the world.
Come forth, Lord Archimonde. Enter this world, and let us bask in your power. Despair. Doom has come to this world. You have done well, little Lich. My plan worked perfectly.
Lord Archimonde,
All the preparations have been made. Very well, Tichondrius. Since the Lich King is of no further use to me, you Dreadlords will now command the Scourge. As you wish, Lord Archimond. Soon, I will order the invasion to begin. But first, I will make an example of these paltry wizards by crushing their city into the ashes of history.
This has got to be a joke. What happens to us now?
Be patient, young Death Knight. The Lich King foresaw this as well. You may yet have a part to play in his grand design.
It seems like all Arthas has done, all he had given up would be for nothing. Yet the Lich King isn't done quite yet. He has no intention of forever staying loyal to Kil'jaeden and the Burning Legion, and plans are set in motion to sabotage the Legion and break out of his prison. The first step in the plan against the Burning Legion is to give the world the power and momentum they needed to stop Archimond. For this, Arthas is told to go find Illidan and inform him about the Skull of Gul'dan.
We could go on fighting like this forever. What is it you truly want?
The Dreadlord who commands this undead army is called Tichondrius. He controls a powerful warlock artifact called the Skull of Gul'dan. It is responsible for corrupting these forests.
And you wish for me to steal it? Why?
Let's just say that I have no love for Tichondrius, and the Lord I serve would benefit from the Legion's downfall.
Why should I believe anything you say, little human?
My master sees all, Demon Hunter. He knows that you've sought power your whole life. Now it lies within your grasp. Seize it, and your enemies will be undone.
Remember that Gul'dan was Ner'zhul's apprentice. He even used the skull himself, and the power locked inside, it gave Illidan the boost he needed to take out the Dreadlord Tichondrius and stop the corruption of their forests. The next step was the world uniting against the Legion, so under Medivh's guidance, the Night Elves, Jaina and the survivors of Lordaeron, Thrall and his newly formed horde, they teamed up, they placed a trap for Archimond, and they blew up the World Tree, sending him back to the Twisted Nether. Months later, Arthas returned home with some bad news for the Dreadlords.
It's been months since we last heard from Lord Archimond. I grow tired of watching over these rotting undead. What are we still doing here?
We were charged with overseeing this land, Deathrok. It is our duty to remain here and ensure that the Scourge is ready for action.
True, though we should have received some kind of orders by now.
The Legion was defeated months ago. How could they not know?
Impossible to say, but the longer they remain in command, the more they run the Scourge into the ground.
What? Who could possibly...
Greetings, Dreadlords. I should thank you for looking after my kingdom during my absence. However, I won't be requiring your services any longer.
Prince Arthas, this land is ours. The Scourge belongs to the Legion.
Not anymore, Demon. Your masters have been defeated. The Legion is undone. Your deaths will complete the circle.
Never! This isn't over, human.
It seemed like things were going very well, yet not everything went according to plan. Pointing Illidan towards the Skull of Gul'dan, it turned him into a great puppet to be used against the Legion, but Kil'jaeden found the Demon Hunter, and he promised him anything his heart desired if he would be able to destroy his treacherous creation. Illidan did his very best to destroy the Lich King and the Frozen Throne from a distance, yet he failed, which caused him to try and hide from Kil'jaeden's wrath in Outland. Escaping somewhere someone like Kil'jaeden is not an easy task. He showed up and he was about to punish Illidan, but the allies he had made, Lady Vashj and her Naga, Kil'jaeden's Sunstrider and the now Blood Elves, formerly known as High Elves, they showed great promise, so he gave Illidan another chance. In the meantime, tossing out Frostmourne and possibly the damage done by Illidan's spell, it weakened the Lich King and his power was fading. Arthas was ordered to return to Northrend immediately, but his powers had weakened as well, to such a degree that the Banshee Sylvanas Windrunner, she was able to liberate herself from his control, she reclaimed her body, and together with the Dreadlords, they planned a bloody coup.
With my powers drained, I can barely command my own warriors. The Lich King warned me that if I didn't reach Northrend soon, all could be lost.
Fear not, my king. Everything is being prepared for your departure. The ships are waiting at the coast, and
there's been a change of plans, King Arthas. You're not going anywhere.
Assassins! It's a trap!
In his moment of weakness, the Dreadlords took control of the forces that just moments ago were still loyal to the Death Knights.
There are too many of them, my king. Flee! Escape from the city! I'll find my own way out and meet you in the wilderness.
In the wilderness, abominations lumbered towards Arthas, but Sylvanas, her Banshees, they quickly came to the rescue.
You have my thanks, ladies, but where is your mistress? Where is Sylvanas?
She sent us to find you, great king. We've come to escort you across the river. Once we cross it, we'll take refuge in the wilderness. This is the place, sisters. We'll rest here, great king.
Why here? We've got to find Kel'thuzad before we...
You have been deceived. Come to my side at once. Obey.
What is happening here? Sylvanas.
You walked right into this one, Arthas. It's time to even the scales.
Traitor! What have you done to me?
It's a special poisoned arrow I made just for you. The paralysis you're experiencing now is but a fraction of the agony you've caused me.
Finish me, then.
A quick death? Like the one you gave me? No. You're going to suffer as I did. Thanks to my arrow, you can't even run. Give my regards to hell, you son of a bitch.
Back, you mindless ones! You shall not fall today, my king.
This isn't over, Arthas. I'll never stop hunting you.
Kel'thuzad saved Arthas' life, and as the Death Knight set sail to Northrend, Kel'thuzad was left behind to watch over the lands. Sylvanas teamed up with the Dreadlord Varimafras, and together they were able to get the capital city, and they worked on their plans of getting revenge. A city was of little concern to Arthas right now, since Illidan, Kil'jaeden and Lady Vashj, they were getting closer and closer to their frozen throne and the Lich King. To help Arthas get there in time, a new Barak was sent by the Lich King to guide him down into the ancient kingdom of Azul Narub. The labyrinth was treacherous, but together they made it through just in time.
We've made it, Anubarak. Our forces are already assembled and waiting.
Greetings, King Arthas. You've arrived just in time. Illidan's Naga and Blood Elf forces have taken up positions at the base of the glacier and...
Arthas, my champion. You have come at last. Now we face a grave danger. My creator, the demon lord Kil'jaeden, sent his agents here to destroy me. If they should reach the frozen throne before you, all will be lost. The scourge will be undone. Now hurry. I will grant you all the power I can spare.
I saw another vision of the Lich King. He has restored my powers. I know now what I must do. It's time to end the game. Once and for all.
On the battlefield, Arthas met with Kil'jaeden's Sunstrider, who had a burning desire for vengeance. Arthas had taken the woman he loved, had murdered his father, destroyed his kingdom. The prince had reforged his father's broken blade, fellow Malorn, and he did his very best to end the Death Knight's life. In their battle, Kil'jaeden and Arthas, they shot spells at each other, while Arthas tried to taunt the mage and break his concentration. "I took your woman," he said, continued to try to anger the mage, although he knew, and probably Kill knew, that Jaina had never belonged to the elf. "I held her in my arms at night. She tasted sweet when I kissed her, Kill. She
loathes you now. You sicken and disgust her, Arthas. Anything she felt for you has since turned to hatred."
Arthas tried to break and anger Kill, but instead it backfired and it made him wonder about the past, about how Jaina regarded him. This hesitation was all Kil'jaeden needed as he shot fireball after fireball until he finally drew his blade and he lunged in, thinking to deal the death blow. But Arthas remembered training with Muradin so long ago, and the dwarf's favorite trick suddenly filled his mind. He pulled his legs in tightly, he kicked Kil'jaeden with all his strength, he then gained the upper hand, was about to strike Kil'jaeden down, but the mage whispered,
"She hates you now,"
before teleporting away. The Blood Elf Prince was gone, and he thought that he bought Illidan enough time. Yet Arthas, despite feeling the aftermath of their fight, he pushed on, and he had to stop Illidan.
"The frozen throne is mine, demon. Step aside. Leave this world and never return. If you do, I'll be waiting."
"I have sworn to destroy it, Arthas. It must be done."
"Never."
In their battle, Illidan bragged about how his twin Blades of Asenov had been with him for over 10,000 years. How long have you fought with your pretty blade, human? How well do you know it? The words were intended to unsettle the Death Knight, but instead they invigorated him. Illidan might have had this admittedly powerful weapon for longer, but Frostmourne was bound to Arthas, and he to it. It was not a sword as much as an extension of himself. He had known it when he first had the vision of it, when he had just arrived in Northrend. He had been certain of the connection when he laid his eyes upon it, waiting for him, and now he felt it surge in his hand, confirming their unity. The demon and the Death Knight, they clashed with each other, and Illidan came very close, but nothing would stand in Arthas' way. Frostmourne pierced the flesh, struck deep, and Illidan fell down into the snow. Arthas thought about ending Illidan right there, but he decided against it, and he decided to let the merciless cold of the place do it for him, as he finished his journey started so long ago. He finally entered and reached the top of Icecrown. As Frostmourne had been for him, so was the armor. Gauntlet fingers closed over the spiked helm, and he lifted slowly, reverently, and then, closing his eyes, he lowered it onto his white head. He was suddenly galvanized, his body tensing as he felt the essence of the Lich King enter him. It pierced his heart, stopped his breath, shivered along his veins. Icy, powerful, crashing through him like a tidal wave. His eyes were closed, but he saw so much. All that Ner'zhul, the orc shaman, had known, all that he had seen, all that he had done. For a moment, Arthas feared he would be overwhelmed by it all, that in the end the Lich King had tricked him into coming here so that he could place his essence into a fresh new body. He braced himself for a battle for control, with his body as a prize, but there was no struggle, only a blending, a melding. All around him the cavern continued to collapse. Arthas was only barely aware of it. His eyes darted rapidly back and forth beneath his closed lids. His lips moved. He spoke. They spoke.
Now, we are one.
This story, as you read the novel Arthas, Rise of the Lich King, you find out that after this moment, Arthas spent his time contemplating the choices he had made, the road that led him to merge with the Lich King. He sees himself in a great hall together with the orc Ner'zhul and a young sick child resembling that small part of him that was still good, that still whispered in the back of his mind that the path he was on was wrong, that he could still turn back. A choice had to be made. Slowly, the Death Knight turned his white head to the boy. The ill child met him with a gaze that was astonishingly clear, and for a moment Arthas felt something inside him stir. Despite everything, the boy would not die, and that meant... The boy smiled a little, and some of the sickness dissipated as Arthas struggled for words. You are me. You are both me, but you. His voice was soft, tinged with wonder and disbelief. You are the little flame that burns inside me still, that resists the ice. You are the last vestige of humanity, of compassion, of my ability to love, to grieve, to care. You are my love for Jaina, my love for my father, for all the things that made me what I once was. Somehow, Frostmourne didn't take it all. I tried to turn away from you, and I couldn't. I can't. The boy's sea-green eyes brightened, and he gave his other self a tremulous smile. His color improved, and before Arthas' eyes, some of the pustules on the skin disappeared. You understand now. Despite all, Arthas, you have not abandoned me. Tears of hope stood in those eyes, and his voice, though stronger now than it has been, quivered with emotion. There must be a reason. Arthas, much harm have you done, but there's goodness in you yet. If there was none, I would not exist, not even in your dreams. He slipped off the chair and slowly walked toward the Death Knight. Arthas stood as he approached. For a moment they regarded each other, the child and the man he had become. The boy extended his arms as if he were a living, breathing child asking to be picked up and held by a loving father. It doesn't have to be too late, he said quietly. No, Arthas said quietly, staring rapidly at the boy. It doesn't. He touched the curve of the boy's cheek, slipped a hand beneath the small chin, and tilted up the shining face. He smiled into his own eyes. But it is. Frostmourne descended. The boy cried out, his shocked, betrayed anguish cry, that of the wind raging outside, and for a moment Arthas saw him standing there. The blade buried in his chest almost as big as he was, and he felt one final tremor of remorse as he met with his own eyes. Then the boy was gone. All that remained of him was the bitter keening of the wind scouring the tormented land. It felt marvelous. It was only with the boy's passing that Arthas truly realized how dreadful a burden this last struggling scrap of humanity had been. He felt light, powerful, purged, scoured clean, as Azeroth would soon be. All his weakness, his softness, everything that had ever made him hesitate or second guess himself, it was all gone now. There was only Arthas, Frostmourne, all but singing at having claimed the final piece of Arthas' soul, and the orc, whose skull face was split with triumphant laughter. Yes, the orc exhilarated, laughing almost manically. I knew you would make this choice. For so long you've wrestled with the last dregs of goodness, of humanity in you, but no longer. The boy held you back, and now you are free. He now got to his feet, his body still that of an old orc, but moving with the ease and fluidity of the young. We are one, Arthas. Together we are the Lich King. No more Ner'zhul, no more Arthas, only this one glorious being. With my knowledge, we can... His eyes bulged as the sword impaled him. Arthas stepped forward, plunging the glittering, hungering Frostmourne ever deeper into the dream being that had once been Ner'zhul, then the Lich King, and was soon to be nothing. Nothing at all. He slipped his other arm around the body, pressing his lips so close to the green air that the gesture was almost intimate as the act of taking a life always was and always would be. No, Arthas whispered. No, no one tells me what to do. I've got everything I need from you. Now the power is mine and mine alone. Now there is only I. I am the Lich King and I am ready. With those words, the Lich King woke up and began his campaign against the world. But before that moment, several very important events took place that we do need to talk about. So, as Arthas made his journey to Northrend, he left Kel'thuzad behind to take care of business. Jaina Proudmoore, she took the survivors of Lordaeron, those that survived the events of the Plague. They battled against the Burning Legion together with Thrall and several others. They won the battle, they blew up Archimonde, and afterwards Jaina settled with her people in Theramore, while Thrall and his people, they built up Orgrimmar. These two leaders were able to look beyond race. Remember how Jaina went to the internment camp when she was young? She didn't just see monsters, she actually saw, creatures that could be pitied with and perhaps had to be released. So they worked together towards peace. They tried to bring some sort of peace between the Alliance and the Horde. Sylvanas Windrunner teamed up with the Dreadlord Varimafras, and together they took the capital city and they formed a faction known as the Forsaken.
The capital city is ours, but we are no longer part of the Scourge. From here on out, we shall be known as the Forsaken. We will find our own path in this world, Dreadlord, and slaughter anyone who stands in our way.
All those able to free themselves from the Lich King's control, they found a home under the leadership of their queen, they joined the Horde, and Sylvanas had her people work on the Plague while plotting her revenge. The Scarlet Crusade was formed, which evolved out of the Knights of the Silver Hand, the order of paladins that Arthas used to belong to. These men and women, they were dedicated to cleanse the lands of the undead of Lordaeron. They made some great progress as well with the legendary blade Ashbringer in the hands of Alexandros Mograine. I've done a full video on the Ashbringer. In short, it's speculated to be made out of the core of a Naru. It was infused with the Holy Light and it did decimating damage to the Scourge. Unfortunately, the Scarlet Crusade was infiltrated from within, and the Dreadlord Balnazar, he worked on corrupting it. He manipulated Alexandros' son, Renaud Mograine, causing him to betray his father and stab him in the back with the Holy Blade. This action did not only corrupt the Ashbringer, turn it to darkness, it also placed his father in the hands of Kel'thuzad, who turned him into a Death Knight. Now some of the members of the Scarlet Crusade, they did not agree with the path that they were on. They did not know that they were infiltrated from within, but they also didn't agree with how fanatic some of the members were. So they stepped away and they formed their own order called the Argent Dawn. Alexandros had a second son, Darion Mograine, who found out that his father might not be dead and still could be saved. He got a team together with volunteers from the Argent Dawn. Together they ventured into the floating citadel of Naxxramas in search of his father. There he found out the truth, that his father was now an agent of the Lich King, one of the 4 horsemen. So with great effort he struck down his own father, but this did not end the torment. Alexandros was still bound to the blade Ashbringer, connected to the corrupted blade. From the blade he whispered to his son to bring him to the Scarlet Monastery, where by this time Renaud had been made Scarlet Commander by the Dreadlord Balnazar. Upon seeing his younger brother, Renaud tries to cut down the final reminder of his former life, but from the blade comes his father's spirits to bring sweet, sweet vengeance. The son slaughtered by the father he had betrayed, and yet Darion couldn't live with the idea of his father's spirits being trapped like that. He sought out the aid of the exiled paladin Tyrion Fordring, who told him that only an act of love greater than the act of evil that corrupted the swords would be powerful enough to free his father's soul. But he also warned the young Mograine that such an act is often the ultimate test of faith. With those words, Darien made his way back to the Argent Dawn, but before he left Tyrion behind, he told him that the Argent Dawn needed men like him. He was once a living vessel of the light. He could be that man, he could be that paladin again. He could be an inspiration, a force, a hero. At Light's Hope Chapel, they could see an army of Scourge led by Kel'thuzad on the way to conquer the chapel and claim the fallen champions buried beneath it. The champions of the light, they put up a very fierce fight, but Darien saw that there was no way that they could win. Not even the arrival of Tyrion himself could change the tides of battle, so Darien embraced his destiny and he made the ultimate sacrifice. Only a test of faith, an act of love would be able to cleanse the blade and set his father free. So he took the Ashbringer and he stabbed himself. In response, the heavens opened up, light scoured the land, decimating the Scourge forces and saving the day. Yet not all was lost for Kel'thuzad. He might not have claimed the thousands buried beneath Light's Hope Chapel, but he did get his hands on a new, powerful Death Knight. In death, Darien was converted, and with the corrupted Ashbringer, he would lead their undead forces into battle and fight against those he had sought to protect. Now in-game, things went a little bit different. We were the ones to make contact with Tyrion, and we tried to get him out of exile, and we were the ones who assaulted the floating citadel of Naxxramas, way back when during Classic. Considering the overall storyline, I'm just going to assume that the events described within the comics, that's the way it all went down. Now within the comics, we also read that Thrall and Varian, under Jaina's guidance, they sit down at Fedamore to try and get some sort of peace between the Alliance and the Horde. These peace treaties, surprisingly, went actually very well until they were attacked, and old hatreds quickly caused accusations to be tossed back and forth. Garrosh blamed the Alliance, Varian blamed the Horde, and the peace that they tried to achieve, it was shattered. There was no way to sit down and try to discuss things further, to try to explain the situation, since the Lich King by this time he had woken up and he decided to let the world know by attacking them on all fronts. The wrath of the Lich King pre-event happened, and the Alliance and the Horde, each of them separately, they launched their campaigns against the Lich King.
It's begun. Young heroes, I was once like you. You have come to this place seeking to bring judgment upon the damned. You will venture deep into forgotten lands. You will see wonders beyond imagining. But be warned. The land itself will rise up against you. Long forgotten terrors will smother your courage. You will sacrifice everything. As the final darkness falls. In the end, all that awaits you is death.
A new hero class was introduced in the expansion, namely Death Knights, who started their adventure within Icarus, firm under control of the Lich King. Each race has their own backstory, but none were able to fight back against the whispers of the Lich King, for the Lich King's will is first and foremost. Their mission was to destroy the forces of the Scarlet Crusade, who were stationed in this area, still remarkably untouched by the plague. With some very clever infiltration, a bit of plague here and there, and of course the devastating might of the Frostworms, the Scarlet Crusade was quickly defeated. Those able set sail to the lands of Northrend, calling themselves the Scarlet Onslaught, but the majority of them were pretty much destroyed. This left one more target for the Death Knights to take, Lies Hope Chapel itself. Led by the Death Knight, Darian Mograine, the soldiers of the Scourge marched upon the chapel, yet the Warriors of the Light did not surrender.
The skies turn red with the blood of the fallen! The Lich King watches over us, minions! Leave only ashes and misery in your destructive wake! I cannot! The blade fights me! You will do as I command! I am in control here! Win, Darian!
With the Ashbringer no longer listening to its master, and the Paladin Tyrion Fordring making his appearance, Darian and his troops, they were defeated and brought before the chapel.
I cannot! The blade fights me! Bring them before the chapel! Stand down, Death Knights! We have lost.
Have you learned nothing, boy? You have become all that your father fought against. Like that coward Arthas, you allowed yourself to be consumed by the darkness, feeding upon the misery of those you tortured and killed. Your master knows what lies beneath the chapel. It is why he dares not show his face. He sent you and your Death Knights to meet their doom, Darian.
Save your breath, old man. It might be the last you ever draw.
My son!
Father!
My dear, beautiful boy.
What?
Father, you have returned. You've been gone a long time, Father. I thought...
Nothing could have kept me away from here, Darian. Not from my home and family.
Father, I wish to join you in the war against the undead. I want to fight. I can sit idle no longer.
My son, there will come a day when you will command the Ashbringer, and with it, mete out justice across this land. You will bring pride to our people, and Lordaeron will be a better place because of you. But, my son, that day is not today. Do not forget.
Touching. He's mine now.
You betrayed me. You betrayed us all, monster! Face the might of Mograine!
Pathetic.
You're a damned monster, Arthas.
You were right, Fordring. I did send them in to die. Their lives are meaningless. But yours... Apocalypse!
That day is not today. Tyrion!
Arthas!
What is this?
Your end.
Impossible. This is not over. When next we meet, it won't be on holy ground, Paladin.
Rise, Darian, and listen. We have all been witness to a terrible tragedy. The blood of good men has been shed upon this soil. Honorable knights, slain defending their lives. And while such things can never be forgotten, we must remain vigilant in our cause. The Lich King must answer for what he has done, and must not be allowed to cause further destruction in our world. On this day, I call for a union. The Argent Dawn and the Order of the Silver Hand will come together as one. We will succeed where so many before us have failed. We will take the fight to Arthas, and we will tear down the walls of Icecrown. The Argent Crusade comes for you, Arthas!
So too do the Knights of the Ebon Blade. Although our kind has no place in your world, we will fight to bring an end to the Lich King. This I vow.
And so the Knights of the Ebon Blade, they stepped away from the Lich King and they teamed up with the Argent Crusade in their battle against the Lich King. Tyrion Fordring wrote out letters for the new Death Knights to take with them as they met the respective leaders, so that they wouldn't simply be cast out as undead. As the world embraced the Death Knights, prepared their forces, even the magical city of Dalaran was rebuilt and sent flying off to Northrend. Dalaran was going to help with the campaign against the Lich King as well as Malygos, and during the expansion, we found out what was going on in Northrend. There were 3 major storylines going on during the expansion. You had the war with the Blue Dragon aspect Malygos, you had the Old God Yogg-Saron, the Titan Keepers and all the events with Ulduar, and then there was, of course, the Scourge and the Lich King. I would love to tell each and every little detail about this expansion, but that would just take way too much time, so I'm going to briefly touch on the events in each zone related to the Lich King, and then we'll dive deeper wherever it's needed. Borean Tundra is one of the 2 locations for the Alliance and Horde's main point of entry into Northrend. The Horde build up Warsong Hold, while the Alliance build up Valiant's Keep. Both factions work on securing the area, taking out the Scourge, and here we find out that Kel'thuzad is still roaming about, so Naxxramas is sure to make a return, and we also help out the Death Knight Vasarian with saving General Arlos and his sister out of the hands of Valanar and the Lich King.
Now this is a surprise, Thasarian. I hadn't heard from Mograine or the other Death Knights for months. You've come to rejoin the Scourge, I take it.
I would sooner slit my own throat. You would pay for what you did to your own men, Arthas. For what you did to me! I swear it!
Howling Fjord was the other entry point into Northrend. Here we find out that Tyrion Fordring, he's gone undercover in an attempt to sneak in undetected. Unfortunately, they also decided to transport the Ashbringer separately, but Ares the Oathbound, charged with bringing the artifacts, he has fallen. He places a blessing of light upon us, asks of us to bring the artifact back to Lord Irulan Trueblade. Upon doing so, Tyrion removes the disguise and he proclaims that he's done with letting others sacrifice themselves for the greater good. He's done with playing hide and seek, and he gets himself ready to assault Icecrown. In this area, we also find out about the Vrykul, Titan creations that were cursed by the old gods. These are the ancestors of the humans who went into hibernation, but they woke up again sometime around War of the Lich King, and they've now allied themselves with the Lich King, who they call their death god. We try to put a stop to their plans. We even kill the wife of King Yimmeron before she wakes up her husband. But the Lich King shows up and he takes their king to Utgard Pinnacle, where we would later take him out.
Not yet, Yimmeron. I have other plans for you. You will serve me better within Utgard Pinnacle. And if these insects survive to find you again, you will get the chance to avenge your wife.
The Vrykul were not only found in the Howling Fjord, and some of them, they competed for the Death's God gifts. The modern day Valkyrie, for example, their creations of the Lich King, they are created from female Vrykul of Valkyrian. Only those that proved themselves worthy were blessed with this gift, and at Jotunheim, they held a competition to hopefully ascend and become Yimmerjar, the elite warriors of the Lich King. Those that failed and lost the battle at Jotunheim, they were turned into Vargul, a lesser form of undeath, because they were not found to be worthy. Within Grizzly Hills, we find out that Archmage Arugal, he's been resurrected as a ghost by the Dark Fallen Princess. Arugal was responsible for summoning the Worgen from the Emerald Dream, but he did it with good intentions. He tried to use the Worgen to protect Gilneas against the Scourge, but the Worgen not only took care of the undead, they also turned on his people. Driven mad with guilt, he adopted the Worgen as his children, and he retreated to Shadowfang Keep, where heroes would later take him out. Now they try to use him again to convert the population into Worgen, but we find out about their plans and we put a stop to it. In this zone, we also meet with a troll named Drakuru, who tricks us into believing that he will help us out with cleansing Drakfaron of the foul undead and restore it to its noble purpose. In truth, he plays us like little pawns. He was working for the Lich King all along, who grants him great power for providing him with a new army.
Arise and accept my gift. Charge you now with the cleansing of Zuldrak, Drakuru.
As you wish, Master.
it shall be your undoing. Succeed, and even greater power shall be yours.
His next task takes him into the next zone, Zul'Drak, where he works on claiming the area for the Lich King, and with the help of the Death Knight Stefan Vadu, we infiltrate Volteris, we convince Drakuru that we're working for him, while we're actually sabotaging their operations. In the final confrontation, Drakuru calls upon the Lich King to help him out, to save his life, but instead, the Lich King beheads him for his failure, while sparing our lives since, apparently, we amuse him.
What treachery is this? You be paying for this deceit with your life, man! This foolish treachery has cost you your destiny. Master, this mortal scum be double-crossing us. They must be made to suffer.
Failed me, Drakuru. It is you who should suffer. Be content that your death is a quick one. As for you, I spare your insignificant life as a reward for this amusing betrayal. There may yet be a shred of potential in you. Be warned. When next we meet, I shall require much more to justify your life.
In Zul'Drak, we also find the Argent Crusade in the middle of two forces. On the one hand, they're fighting against the Scourge, while on the other hand, they have to deal with the Drakari trolls. These trolls have begun sacrificing their own Loa, their own animal gods, to fight back against the Scourge. A Zandalari tribe has also showed up to intervene on behalf of the gods, as well as witness the end of the Drakari Empire. We do whatever it takes to stop the madness. We team up with the Loa, and we even go inside of Gundrak, their capital city, and we put an end to the Drakari. Sholazar Basin has always been able to protect itself from the Scourge, from the undead, but the Cult of the Damned has been able to infiltrate it and do some serious damage to one of the pillars. These pillars were used to protect the zone, and now the way is open for the Scourge to rush in and take the land. With the aid of Avatar Freya, we find out about a Titan creation called a Timidian, and with its destructive force, we take out the Scourge. There is one more zone that I'm going to talk about today, which is the Storm Peaks. Here we find out that Muradin Bronzebeard, he's now the king of the Frostborn, and he goes by the name of Yorick Stormheart. When Arthas picked up Frostmourne, Muradin didn't die. Instead, he woke up with total amnesia, and he was picked up by a group of the Frostborn dwarves. A gigantic Jormungandr attacked them, but Muradin is no pushover, and he single-handedly brought the worm down, saving the dwarves. This earned him the name Yorick Stormheart, a name of legends, and over time, they made him their king. During the questline in Storm Peaks, we team up with Muradin's brother Bran Bronzebeard in an attempt to get access to the archives within Ulduar, and during this questline, King Stormheart helps us out. Bran wants to meet and thank the king for his help, and as they reunite, Muradin's memory returns. He tries to remember his life before he joined the Frostborn, and all he remembers are nightmares of a human. Tall, light hair, death black armor, Arthas. Muradin feels responsible for letting Arthas slip to the dark side like that without doing anything about it. Regrets won't change a thing though, only actions can make things right, so Muradin would later join us in the assault upon Icecrown. Dragonblight, the great dragon graveyard. This is the place where dragons go to die. Here we met up and we helped out the several different dragonflights with defending their shrines from the Scourge. The Scourge is also trying to resurrect the gigantic protodrake known as Galagrond, who millennia ago was defeated by the Espex together with the Titan Keeper Tyr. We luckily prevented the resurrection from ever happening, as well as gained the support of the Red Dragonflight. The Scarlet Onslaught, those that were able to escape the Lich King's Death Knight in the Plague Lands, they they've built up a base within Dragonblight. Unfortunately, it seems like any form of the Scarlet Organization is destined to be corrupted, since the Dreadlord Mal'Ganis, he's infiltrated them under the disguise of Admiral Baryon Westwind. This means that Arthas sacrificed to get revenge to pick up Frostmourne to take down Mal'Ganis. It meant very little, since as a Dreadlord, Mal'Ganis cannot die upon Azeroth, and he simply returned later.
I will see you weaklings in Icecrown, if you live that long.
As we finally confront Mal'Ganis within Icecrown, he claims that we will never be able to take on the Lich King without his forces, which had some belief that he would be able to play a role within the final encounter, but sadly, that storyline never made it in, and his current fate is unknown.
I'll have my revenge on him and you.
The Nerubians and Ner'zhul Nerub can also be found within Dragonblight. Those that were able to survive the War of the Spider, they're now in a civil war against those forced to serve the Lich King. With that, we found a common enemy, so we teamed up with the Nerubians and we went into the Old Kingdom, eventually taking care of none other than Anub'arak himself.
Never thought I would be free of him.
Meanwhile, our forces have made great effort assaulting Icecrown Citadel from the back, and in response, the Lich King, he sent out his floating Citadel of Nathramas to lay siege upon Winterguard Keep. Heroes once more ventured within the Forsaken Place, facing off against the most vile and powerful creations of the Scourge.
Forces are merely marshaled to strike back against your enemies, my liege.
Soon, we will eradicate the Alliance and Horde. Then the rest of Azeroth will fall before the might of my army.
Yes, Master. The time of their ultimate demise grows close. What is this?
Invaders, here. Destroy them, Kel'thuzad. Naxxramas must not fall.
As you command, Master.
Greetings.
Not even Kel'thuzad himself was able to finish off these heroes, yet this time we couldn't find his phylactery, so Kel'thuzad can still make a return. A Lich, a being like Kel'thuzad, can only be truly destroyed when you destroy its phylactery, and after this defeat in Classic, we did find the phylactery. We gave it to Father Inigo Montoy, a quest giver at Light's Hope Chapel, with the idea that surely the forces at Light's Hope Chapel were going to destroy it. As it turns out, he never turned over the phylactery to the Argent Dawn, instead he brought it back to Arthas, and as the reward, he was turned into a Lich himself. Now known as Fazal the Duskbringer, he commanded part of the Scourge forces assaulting Winterguard Keep. After a very long questline, we discovered the location of his phylactery, and together with Bolvar 4 Dragon, we end the Lich life and we save Winterguard Keep. With this victory, we were able to focus our full attention upon the Wrathgate. We assault Icecrown Citadel and we challenge the Lich King.
Take the lead! For Morderon! For the Alliance! Back, you mindless wretches! Fight on, brothers!
Rise up, sons of the Horde! Blood and glory await us! Lontargar! For the Horde!
I was wondering if you'd show up.
I couldn't let the Alliance have all the fun today.
Arthas! The blood of your father, of your people, demands justice! Come forth, coward, and answer for your crimes!
will show you the justice of the grave and the true meaning of fear.
Enough talk! Let it be finished!
You will pay for all the lives you've stolen, traitor!
Boldly stated, but there is nothing you can...
What? Did you think we had forgotten? Did you think we had forgiven? Behold now the terrible vengeance of the Forsaken!
Sylvanas.
Death to the Scourge! And death to the living!
Now, all can see. This is the hour of the Forsaken.
We're finished. No escape for any of us.
For years, Sylvanas had a Forsaken work on perfecting a plague, which they planned to use against Arthas and the Scourge. But Sylvanas was betrayed from within by Grand Apothecary Putris and the Dreadlord Varimafras. They were the ones responsible for the loss of so many lives at the Wrathgate, as well as taking the Undercity from the Banshee Queen. Both the Alliance and Horde, they had to pull their attention away from Northrend for a while, as they focused on retaking the city and bringing sweet, sweet justice to those responsible.
Years wasted. We are victorious!
After the battle for Undercity, after stopping Varimafras for summoning Sargeras, this brings us to the final zone related to the Lich King, Icecrown itself. High Lord Tyrion Fordring led the assault into the Scourge's main territory, slowly but surely claiming more ground for the Warriors of Light. The Knights of the Evanblade also played their part, as they took the Shadow Vault and made it their main base of operations within Icecrown. As we follow the questline, we encounter a young child named Mephius Laner, who shows us what the Lich King has done with his time. For example, how he battled with Illidan, how he resurrected the mighty blue dragon Sindragosa. He explained that after his battle with Illidan, Arthas realized what was holding him back, that he was still human, he could still feel, he could still bleed. He still had a heart, so the first thing that he did when he became a king was carve out his own heart and toss it down a pit. Adventurers, during their questing in Icecrown, they accidentally touched it without realizing what it was, and Arthas surely wouldn't leave it unguarded again. We bring this information to Tyrion, who was already informed by his scouts that the Cult of the Damned were bearing some sort of artifact. They were taking it to the Cathedral of Darkness, and he now realizes that this artifact is Arthas' heart. This thing might contain the last bit of his humanity. As long as such an artifact exists, there is still a chance that Arthas can become a man again. Disguised as cultists, we enter the cathedral, but the Lich King is not easily fooled. He immediately recognizes us for who we are, and he's not surprised to find us there either. Tyrion, upon seeing the heart, he realized that there's only shadows from the past, and that there's nothing left of Arthas to redeem. He has seen the truth for himself now, and with a mighty charge, he brings the Ashbringer down, destroying the hearts, yet knocking himself out in the process. The Lich King is about to make the old man pay for that action, but luckily the Knights of the Ebonblade, they show up and they save the day. Tyrion does not see all of this as a failure, since it confirmed what he needed to know. There is no Arthas anymore, there is only the Lich King, so it's time to hold a little tournament and find out who is ready and who is worthy to join the Argent Crusade in their assault upon Icecrown.
You have heard the call of the Argent Crusade, and you have boldly answered. It is here, in the Crusaders' Colosseum, that you will face your greatest challenges. Those of you who survive the rigors of the Colosseum will join the Argent Crusade on its march to Icecrown Citadel.
Heroes of the Alliance and Horde are pitched against the fiercest dangers Northrend had to offer, until the Lich King himself showed up to ruin the party.
We will strike against Icecrown Citadel and destroy what remains of the Scourge. There is no challenge that we cannot face united.
You will have your challenge, Fordring.
Arthas, you are hopelessly outnumbered. Lay down Frostmourne and I will grant you a just death.
The Nerubians built an empire beneath the frozen wastes of Northrend. An empire that you so foolishly built your structures upon. My empire. The souls of your fallen champions will be mine. Fordring.
Our guests have arrived, just as the Master promised.
Anub'arak, resurrected once more by the Lich King and forced to serve one final time, we take him out and we finally liberate him.
I have failed you, Master.
With the tournament behind us, with the troops selected, with the path mostly cleared, it was finally time to knock on the door and let the Lich King know that the Light's justice has been awakened.
Rise up, Argent Crusaders! The hour of justice has come!
Feel it, my son, closing in all around you. The Light's justice has been awakened. The sins of the past have finally caught up to you. You will be called to account for all the atrocities you committed. The unspeakable horrors you've let loose upon this world. And the dark, ancient powers you've enslaved. My soul was one of the first to be devoured by your evil. There are thousands more bound within this blade, and they cry out for release. Look now to your defenses, my son, for the champions of justice gather at your gates.
With the Lich King's attention drawn to the front door, a small team worked on infiltrating the frozen halls led by either Jaina Proudmoore or Sylvanas Windrunner.
Thank the Light for seeing you here safely. We have much work to do if we are to defeat the Lich King and put an end to the Scourge. Our allies within the Argent Crusade and the Knights of the Ebonblade have broken through the front gate of Icecrown and are attempting to establish a foothold within the Citadel.
With the attention of the Lich King turned towards the front gate,
We'll be working our way through the side, in search of information that will enable us to defeat him, once and for all. Our scouts have reported that the Lich King has a private chamber outside of the Frozen Throne, deep within a place called the Halls of Reflection. That is our target, champions.
We will carve a path through this wretched place and find a way to enter the Halls of Reflection. I sense powerful magic hidden away within those halls. Magic that could be the key to destroying the Scourge.
The Dark Lady watches over you. Make haste.
Intruders have entered the Master's domain. Signal the alarms. Fodder. Not even fit to labor in a quarry. Relish these final moments, for soon you will be nothing more than mindless undead.
Heroes of the Alliance, attack!
Your last waking memory will be of agonizing pain.
No! You monster!
Pathetic weaklings.
Minions, destroy these interlopers!
You will have to battle your way through this cesspit on your own. Free any Horde slaves that you come across. We will most certainly need their assistance in battling Tyrannus. I will gather reinforcements and join you on the other side of the quarry.
Wait, stop. Don't kill me, please. I'll tell you everything.
Why should the Banshee Queen spare your miserable life?
What you seek is in the Master's lair, but you must destroy Tyrannus to gain entry. Now, within the Halls of Reflection, you will find Frostmourne. It holds the truth.
Frostmourne? The Lich King is never without his blade. If you are lying to me...
I swear it's true! Please don't kill me!
Worthless gnat. Death is all that awaits you.
No!
Do not think that I shall permit you entry into my master's sanctum so easily. Pursue me if you dare.
A fitting end for a traitor. Come, we must free the slaves and see what is within the Lich King's chamber for ourselves.
What a cruel end. Come, heroes. We must see if the gnome's story is true. If we can separate Arthas from Frostmourne, we might have a chance at stopping him.
Alas, brave adventurers, your meddling has reached its end. Do you hear the clatter of bone and steel coming up the tunnel behind you? That is the sound of your impending demise.
We will hold off the undead as long as we can, even to our dying breath. Deal with the Scourge Lord!
Such an amusing gesture from the rabble. When I have finished with you, my master's blade will feast upon your souls. Die! Impossible! Rhymefang! Warned!
Brave champions, we owe you our lives, our freedom. Though it be a tiny gesture in the face of this enormous debt, I pledge that from this day forth, all will know of your deeds and the blazing path of light you cut through the shadow of this dark citadel. This day will stand as a testament not only to your valor, but to the fact that no foe, not even the Lich King himself, can stand
Heroes, to
when
me.
Alliance and Horde set aside their differences and...
The Frost Queen is gone. We must keep moving. Our objective is near. I could not save them. Damn you, Arthas! Damn you!
I thought he'd never shut up. At last, Sindragosa silenced that long-winded fool. To the Halls of Reflection, champions! Our objective is near. I can sense it. I don't believe it. Frostmourne stands before us, unguarded, just as the gnome claimed. Come, heroes. Standing this close to the blade that ended my life. And the pain, it is renewed.
Frostmourne, the blade that destroyed our kingdom. Stand back! Touch that blade and your soul will be scarred for all eternity. I must attempt to commune with the spirits locked away within Frostmourne. Give me space.
Jaina, could it truly be you?
Uther! Dear Uther!
Jaina, you haven't much time. The Lich King sees what the sword sees. He will be here shortly.
Arthas is here? Maybe I...
No, girl. Arthas is not here. Arthas is merely a presence within the Lich King's mind. A dwindling presence.
But Uther, if there's any hope of reaching Arthas, I must try.
Jaina, listen to me. You must destroy the Lich King. You cannot reason with him. He will kill you and your allies and raise you all as powerful soldiers of the Scourge.
Tell me how, Uther. How do I destroy my prince?
Snap out of it, girl. You must destroy the Lich King at the place where he merged with Ner'zhul. Atop the spire, at the frozen throne. It is the only way.
You're right, Uther. Forgive me. I don't know what got a hold of me.
The Lich King is here? Then my destiny shall be fulfilled on this day.
You cannot defeat the Lich King. Not here. You would be a fool to try. He will kill those that follow you and raise them as powerful soldiers of the Scourge. But for you, Sylvanas, his reward for you would be worse than the last.
There must be a way.
Perhaps, but know this. There must always be a Lich King. Even if you were to strike down Arthas, another would have to take his place. For without the control of the Lich King, the Scourge would wash over the world like locusts, destroying all that they touched.
Who could bear such a burden?
I do not know, Banshee Queen. I suspect that the piece of Arthas that might be left inside the Lich King is all that holds the Scourge from annihilating Azeroth. Alas, the only way to defeat the Lich King is to destroy him at the place where he was created.
The Frozen Throne.
Aye.
Silence, Paladin. So, you wish to commune with the dead. You shall have your wish. Valric, Marwyn, bring their corpses to my chamber when you are through.
As you wish, my lord.
Soldiers of Lordaeron, rise to meet your master's call.
You won't deny me this, Arthas. I must know. I must find out.
You will not escape me that easily, Arthas. I will have my vengeance.
I will not make the same mistake again, Sylvanas. This time, there will be no escape. You will all serve me in death.
He's too powerful. Heroes, quickly, come to me. We must leave this place immediately. I will do what I can to hold him in place while we flee.
Your allies have arrived, Jaina, just as you promised. You will all become powerful agents of the Scourge.
He is too powerful. We must leave this place at once. My magic can hold him in place for only a short time. Come quickly, heroes.
There is no escape. Death's cold embrace.
I will destroy this barrier. You must hold the undead back! There's an opening up ahead. Go now! It's a dead end. We have no choice but to fight. Steel yourself, heroes, for this is our last stand.
Nowhere to run. You're mine now.
Shh, I'm trying to think here.
Fire! Fire! Quickly, climb aboard. We mustn't tarry here. There's no telling when this whole mountainside will collapse.
Forgive me, heroes. I should have listened to Uther. I had to see for myself. To look into his eyes one last time. I am sorry. We now know what must be done. I will deliver this news to King Varian and High Lord Fordring.
Nowhere to run. You're mine now.
Fire! Fire! Get on board, now! This whole mountainside could collapse at any moment.
We are safe for now. His strength has increased tenfold since our last battle. It will take a mighty army to destroy the Lich King. An army greater than even the Horde can rouse.
We cannot face the Lich King on our own. He's simply too powerful, so we'll have to gather our forces and enter Icecrown Citadel, deal with the most powerful creatures, and make our way to the top.
What happens here will echo through the ages. Regardless of outcome, they will know that we fought with honor. That we fought for the freedom and safety of our people. Remember, heroes, fear is your greatest enemy in these befouled halls. Steel your heart, and your soul will shine brighter than 1,000 suns. The enemy will falter at the sight of you. They will fall as the light of righteousness envelops them. Our march upon Icecrown Citadel begins now!
You now stand upon the hallowed ground of the Scourge. The light won't protect you here, Paladin. Nothing will protect you.
Arthas! I swore that I would see you dead and the Scourge dismantled. I'm going to finish what I started at Light's Hope.
You could have been my greatest champion, Fordring. A force of darkness that would wash over this world and deliver it into a new age of strife. But that honor is no longer yours. Soon, I will have a new champion. The breaking of this one has been taxing. The atrocities I have committed upon his soul. He has resisted for so long, but he will bow down before his king soon.
Never! I will never serve you!
In the end, you will all serve me.
The Paladin still lives? Is it possible, High Lord? Could he have survived?
The power of the light knows no bounds, Saurfang. His soul is under great strain, but he lives. For now.
Then we must save him. If we rescue Bolvar Fordragon, we may quell the unrest between the Alliance and the Horde.
Could it be, Lord Fordring? If Bolvar lives, mayhap there is hope for peace between the Alliance and the Horde. We must reach the top of this cursed place and free the Paladin!
High Lord Bolvar Fordragon survived the events of the Wrathgate and is being tortured by the Lich King to turn him into a servant. Both the Alliance and the Horde make it a mission to save Bolvar, since this might quell the unrest between the factions. As we venture through Icecrown Citadel, we encounter several different bosses, but not all of them have that much story, while some of them are really interesting. We start off with Lord Merogar. He's the guardian of the frozen throne within the Spire Chamber. Pieced together by the Lich King from the bones of 1,000 vanquished adventurers, Merogar wields the power of the throne itself. Without the destruction of this bony being, there is no hope of taking Icecrown Citadel.
I see. Only darkness.
The Lich Lady Deathwhisper is the supreme overseer of the Cult of the Damned. Entering her room triggers her speech, in which she talks about how all of them found their way because they're amongst the few gifted with a true vision in a world cursed with blindness. She calls the meat on their bones a curse, a weakness, a crippling flaw as a joke played by the creators upon their own creations. They see being turned into the undead as a great honor, but some speculate that she's talking about more. The old gods cursed some of the Titan creations with the curse of flesh, which made them weaker. It literally gave them flesh and it made them more vulnerable for their corruption. Some speculate that the old god Yogg-Saron had a lot more to do with the events of the Lich King, considering that one of his visions as you enter his mind is of the Lich King torturing Bolvar, Serenite is Yogg-Saron's blood, which was used to build up the Citadel, and this speech all seems to connect to Yogg-Saron with the Lich King. It's never really been confirmed though, so speculation is all we have.
All part of the Master's plan! Your end is inevitable!
The Icecrown gunship battle is a little bit strange story-wise, but it made for a pretty damn cool fight. Both the Horde and the Alliance, they're assaulting Icecrown Citadel at the same time, and tension between the two factions are high, since both factions lost a whole bunch of people at the Wrathgate. Both factions want to desperately reach the perfect vantage point, take down Arthas and save Bolvar to bring peace. So they want it so bad that they decided to blow each other out of the sky just to get the glory.
Don't say I didn't warn you, scoundrels! Onward, brothers and sisters!
The Alliance falter! Onward to the Lich King! You dare board my ship? Your death will come swiftly!
After the gunship battle, we meet another victim of the Wrathgate, Deathbringer Saurfang. This is High Overlord Saurfang's son, who lost his soul to Frostmourne and has been turned to a Death Knight by the Lich King.
My boy died at the Wrathgate. I am here only to collect his body.
Stubborn and old, what chance do you have? I am stronger and more powerful than you ever were.
We named him Dranosh. It means Heart of Draenor in Orcish.
Both sides defeat the Orc, where on the Horde side, Saurfang collects his son, but on the Alliance side, you see a bit more conversation.
Soldiers, fall in! Looks like the Horde are coming to take another shot!
Don't force me hand, Orc. We can't let you pass.
Behind you lies the body of my only son. Nothing will keep me from him.
I can't do it. Get back on your ship and we'll spare your life.
Stand down, Muradin. Let a grieving father pass.
No ko kills Ilnok, Atar. I will not forget this kindness. I thank you, Highness.
I was not at the Wrathgate, but the soldiers who survived told me much of what happened. Your son fought with honor. He died a hero's death. He deserves a hero's burial.
Respect is shown, and Saurfang takes his boy home. Rotface and Vestagut, they don't really have a story besides being created by Professor Putricide, who they see as their father, and they love their pets very much.
Good news, everyone!
Professor Putricide has perfected a plague which will eradicate all life on Azeroth, and he's probably responsible for most of the abominations and creations that we've seen in the Scourge army.
Bad news, everyone! I don't think I'm going to make it.
Foolish mortals. You thought us defeated so easily. The Sand Lane are the Lich King's immortal soldiers. Now, you shall face their might combined!
The Blood Prince Council consists of 3 Darkfallen princes, which we encountered and defeated before. Darkfallen are vampiric undead blood elves resurrected by Arthas after they defeated during Warcraft 3. Prince Khayllys, he was the first boss of Utgard Keep and the Scourge Overlord of the Howling Fjords. Prince Valanar, he was the Scourge Overlord of the Borean Tundra and taken out with the help of Visarion. Prince Tel'daram, he was the second boss of Ahn'kahet, where he was searching for lost Nerubian relics to empower the Scourge's murderous ranks and please the Lich King. With the Darkfallen Orb empowering them, they tried to stop our assault, but they failed, and the next encounter was against their Blood Queen Lanafel.
You have made an unwise decision.
Not all the Blood Elves that were turned into Darkfallen, they died while fighting together with their Prince Kil'fa Sunstrider. Some of them survived a little bit longer in Northrend, they were left behind by their prince, and one by one, Arthas picked them off, converting them into his dark army. Lanafel was one of those survivors, and with the legendary blade Quel'Dalar, she tried to hold her ground, but the might of Frostmourne, it was simply too great. She lost her life, and Arthas decided to not only turn her into the undead, he also made her the Blood Queen of all the Darkfallen. Lanafel eagerly carried out her new duties given to her by the Lich King, but the blade, it reminded her of her former life and she could not afford such distractions. With a scream that echoed throughout Icecrown, she shattered Quel'Dalar and she flung the fractured pieces as far as she could. Heroes would later find the battered hilt of the weapon and restore the legendary blade, while Lanafel found the demise within Icecrown.
But we were all getting along. So,
Valeria Dreamwalker is one of those bosses that just seems very random, since all we know is that she's a captured green dragon and they tried to destroy her so that they could resurrect her into an agent of the Scourge. By resurrecting her health, we gave her enough power to shatter her bonds, she liberated herself, and then she simply disappeared into thin air.
I am renewed! Ysera grants me the favor to lay these foul creatures to rest!
Finally, there's Sindragosa, a blue dragon in life. She was the prime consort of the blue dragon aspect Malygos.
You are fools who have come to this place! The icy winds of Northrend will consume your souls!
During the War of the Ancients, they created a device known as the Dragon Soul, later to be known as the Demon Soul, which was planned to be used against the invading Legion. What they didn't know was that Deathwing, he was corrupted by the Old Gods, and he didn't just use the device against the Legion, he also used it against the Night Elf forces and his fellow dragons. With its power, he nearly wiped out the entire Blue Dragonflight, including Sindragosa. The blast of the spell hurled her all the way to the Cold North. Blinded and near death, Sindragosa sought desperately to reach the Dragonblight, the place where dragons go to die. No longer able to fly, Sindragosa plummeted to the cold earth in the region of Icecrown. The blue dragon gathered what remained of her energy and called out to Malygos for aid. Her only answer was the howling Arctic wind as she struggled on, but the distance was far too great. Agonizingly, she realized that her spirit would not find rest within Dragonblight. Her life continued to fade away as her sanity deteriorated. In the midst of her delirium, Sindragosa's final thoughts turned to bitterness and hatred. Hatred against the Legion, hatred against Neltharion, hatred even against Malygos. But most of all, hatred against the world of mortals. And in her dying moments, Sindragosa vowed revenge. Now many years later, Arthas used Frostmourne to resurrect the mighty blue dragon, and she was forced to fight for the Lich King. The whole revenge bit never made it into the overall storyline, since she seems pretty happy that we take her out and liberate her from the Lich King's control. Very similar to Anubarak, for example.
Can you feel the cold hand of death upon your heart?
Now with all of his creations, all of his powerful minions defeated, it was finally time to join Tirion Fordring upon the top of Icecrown and finally face the Lich King himself.
So, the light's vaunted justice has finally arrived. Shall I lay down Frostmourne and throw myself at your mercy?
We'll grant you a swift death, Arthas. More than can be said for the thousands you've tortured and slain.
You'll learn of that first.
firsthand. When my work is complete, you will beg for mercy, and I will deny you. Your anguished cries will be testament to my unbridled power.
So be it. Champions, attack!
I'll keep you alive to witness the end, Fordring. I would not want the Light's greatest champion to miss seeing this wretched world remade in my image.
Tyrion is placed within a block of ice, and heroes have to deal with the Lich King themselves. There seems to be a glimmer of hope on the horizon though, as his health slowly drops, but then the Lich King, he unleashes the fury of Frostmourne, taking out all the heroes gathered.
No questions remain unanswered. No doubts linger. You are Azeroth's greatest champions. You overcame every challenge I laid before you. My mightiest servants have fallen before your relentless onslaught. Your unbridled fury. Is it truly righteousness that drives you? I wonder. You trained them well, Fordring. You delivered the greatest fighting force this world has ever known, right into my hands, exactly as I intended. You shall be rewarded for your unwitting sacrifice. Watch now, as I raise them from the dead to become masters of the Scourge. They will shroud this world in chaos and destruction. Azeroth's fall will come at their hands, and you will be the first to die.
Throughout the entire expansion, the Lich King has watched us, pitched us against the mightiest of foes, making sure that when the time was right, he would have the mightiest heroes the world had to offer, ready to be converted into his ranks. He might have won that day, might have recruited the most powerful heroes into his army, was it not for Tyrion and the Light's blessing.
Light, grant me one final blessing. Give me the strength to shatter these bonds. No more, Arthas! No more lives will be consumed by your hatred!
Free, at last! It is over, my son. This is the moment of reckoning. Rise up, champions of the light!
With one single strike, the Ashbringer shatters Frostmourne and 1,000 vengeful souls are released, holding the Lich King high in the air. King Terenas resurrects the fallen heroes, and together they end the nightmare. Together they defeat the Lich King.
Now I stand, the lion before the lambs, and they do not fear. They cannot fear.
Father, is it over?
At long last. No king rules forever, my son.
I see. Only darkness before me.
Master's command, the restless scourge will become an even greater threat to this world. Control must be maintained. There must always be a Lich King.
The weight of such a burden. It must be mine, for there is no other.
Tyrion! You hold a grim destiny in your hands, brother. But it is not your own.
Bolvar! By all that is holy.
The dragon's flame sealed my fate. The world of the living can no longer comfort me. Place the crown upon my head, Tyrion. Forevermore, I will be the jailer of the damned.
No, old friend. I cannot.
Do it, Tyrion! You and these brave heroes have your own destinies to fulfill. This last act of service is mine. I must be forgotten, Tyrion. If the world is to live free from the tyranny of fear, they must never know what was done here today. Lich King is dead, and that Bolvar Dragon died with him. Now, go. Leave this place, and never return.
And there ends the story of the Lich King. However, his actions still echo throughout the storyline to this day, and his legacy will not soon be forgotten. When you defeat the Lich King while holding Shadowmourne, you'll get a sealed chest, which High Lord Darian Mograine will open up for you, and inside there are some special items which you can turn in with the respective owners. These are the conversations that wrap up minor bits and pieces between Arthas and characters that were very important in the storyline, and a big thank you to HazedShaman for letting me use his recordings.
Arthas. Alas, hero of Azeroth, you give me a greater gift than you know. Long have I struggled to forgive the prince for his terrible transgressions. My soul has been racked with unbearable anxiety, dark thoughts, distancing me from the light. I recall clearly the gleam of pride in his eye as he stood before me, eager to defeat the enemies of the light. Eager to defend his people, no matter the cost. It is this memory of Arthas that I choose to keep in my heart. I shall always be in your debt, friend.
Uther's soul finds rest, and he decides to remember the good side of Arthas.
Oh, lad. How I miss those endless days in Lordaeron. Sharpening your skill with this dull blade. Forging you into a weapon meant to withstand the demands of a great destiny. Heh. You sure put them skills to use, didn't you, lad? If only I'd been able to stop you that day. How different things might have been. If only I'd have never discovered that accursed blade. Farewell, Arthas. My brother.
Muradin wonders how things could have been different, and he decides to remember Arthas as his brother.
Father. Darian, my son. At last, I am able to lay my eyes upon you again.
Father, I feared for your sanity.
The Lich King tormented me without end, Darian. Endlessly, he sought to break my will, to force me to serve him, to bind me to his blade. Finally, when events demanded his full attention, he left me. The one memory I clung to, Darian, the one thought that kept me from giving in, it was your sacrifice, my son, that again saved me from eternal peril.
Father, for you, I would give my life 1,000 times.
Alexandril's Mograine soul finally finds peace, and Darian, he would later show up in Draenor, searching for some way to liberate Bolvar out of his fate as jailer of the damned.
What's this? He kept it. All this time, he kept it. I knew. I sensed a part of him still alive, trapped, struggling. Oh, Arthas. Perhaps he might someday remember what he once was. By the light, may he at last find rest, free from the icy grip of that terrible blade.
Arthas kept a reminder of his love for Jaina, something she always knew deep down in her heart. She hopes that his spirits will find rest free from that accursed blade, but unfortunately, that's not what the future holds for Arthas.
So, it is done. I had not dared to trust my senses. Too many times has the Lich King made me to be a fool. Finally, he has been made to pay for the atrocities he imposed upon my people. May Azeroth never fail to remember the horrible price we paid for our weakness, for our pride. But what now, hero? What of those freed from his grasp, but still shackled to their mortal coils? Leave me. I have much to ponder.
Sylvanas would later travel back to the top of Icecrown, where she found out that Bolvar is the new Lich King, yet her purpose, her whole mission, was complete. She got the revenge that she desired, so she tossed herself off the top of Icecrown in an attempt to end her undead suffering. Instead of ending it though, she found herself in a whole new realm of suffering, a hell where the spirit of Arthas was being tormented as well. This would be her fate, but luckily for the Banshee Queen, the Valkyr, they came down and they offered her a deal. They would ally themselves with Sylvanas, they would take her place in hell in case she died, and they would resurrect more Forsaken troops to bolster their ranks. In exchange, they would be free from Bolvar's control, and knowing the hell and the torment that waits for her, Sylvanas agreed.
With the death of the Lich King, many of the more intelligent Scourge became unemployed. Those fiends, as you so delicately put it, are called Valkyr. They are under my command now. And they are part of the reason that I asked to see you.
Get on with it, Sylvanas!
Very well, War Chief. I have solved the plight of the Forsaken. As a race, we Forsaken are unable to procreate. With the aid of the Valkyr, we are now able to take the corpses of the fallen and create new Forsaken. Agatha, show the War Chief!
What you have done here, Sylvanas, it goes against the laws of nature. Disgusting is the only word I have to describe it.
War Chief, Without these new Forsaken, my people would die out. Our hold upon Gilneas and Northern Lordaeron would crumble.
Have you given any thought to what this means, Sylvanas? What difference is there between you and the Lich King now?
Isn't it obvious, War Chief? I serve the Horde.
Watch your clever mouth, bitch!
The Lich King story ripples on throughout Warcraft, even to this day, but for now, the story has come to an end. Thank you all so very much for watching and joining me on this incredible journey. This has been the biggest project that I've ever done, the biggest story I've ever told, and I hope I did it justice. As always, ladies and gentlemen, subscribe if you like my videos, leave a like if you enjoyed this one, and until next time guys, see ya!